The world is evolving at lightning speed. Artificial intelligence is reshaping every industry. At graduation ceremonies across the world, students have been cheering commencement speakers praising the rise of AI, not because they don't understand it, but because their jobs are disappearing, one by one. Unemployment among undergraduates is at an all-time high. Ivy League acceptance rates have staggered fivefold over the past 3 decades. And the gap between those with the right guidance and those without has never been wider. The rules have changed. The question is whether you know the new ones. Today, we bring together some of the industry's most influential leaders, founders who built from zero to IPO, policymakers shaping Singapore's future, and educators helping the world's most ambitious students achieve their dreams, to answer the questions that will shape your tomorrow. Sedifly. Sedifly is here to engage, educate, and empower. This is the Future Student Summit.
Please welcome Ananya and Head of Program at Sedifly.
Hello everyone. A very good afternoon to everyone and a warm welcome to the Future Student Summit 2026. I hope you're all as excited as I am to kick off today's incredible lineup. As the head of program here at Sedifly, it's my absolute honor to be your MC and guide you through today's landmark event. We have gathered here today at the beautiful JW Marriott South Beach Hotel, and I cannot be more happier to see such smiling faces in the crowd. In fact, today's event was oversubscribed, and I'd like to say a warm welcome to everybody who's here in this room with me, as well as all the other guests in the other broadcast rooms nearby. With over 150 people gathered on site today, I cannot tell you how thrilled the Sedifly team is to be here presenting for this crowd. Our team has flown in from all corners of the globe to bring this summit to life. I personally flew all the way from Dubai amidst all that chaos to be here with you. The team is fully pumped and are ready to deliver a truly transformative experience. We have an incredible lineup of global minds who will be sharing not only their educational journeys, but also their professional experiences and strategic insights. So whether you're here exploring world-class university options, looking for career inspiration, or simply curious about what the future holds, we hope you find what we've put together for you incredibly insightful. As you can see on the screen behind me, we have designed today's program to take you on a complete journey. We'll start with the strategic blueprint of global university admissions, move into first-hand insights from our successful alumni, and transition into a heavy-hitting panel featuring some of Asia's top venture capitalists and founders. You can also find our full agenda on the official Sedifly website, so feel free to look it up anytime. To conclude our main sessions, we are deeply honored to host an exclusive keynote interview with our guest of honor, Mr. Alvin Tan, Minister of State for Trade and Industry and National Development, before wrapping up the day with an open networking session, so everyone's free to join that. An event of this scale would not be possible with our incredible partners. We would like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank our title sponsors, the Assembly's Place, as well as our community partners, Plug and Play and Confirm Good. To make this a fully interactive experience, we would like to invite each and every one of you to actively participate via Pigeonhole. You can scan the QR codes on the screen and drop in your questions on the platform as they come along. So no matter what the session, feel free to send in your questions. Our moderators will do their absolute best to address them during the Q&A sessions. We should have this on display later during the sessions as well. Speaking of making most out of today, you would have already been handed some readiness forms at the registration counters. So if you're curious to know what Sedifly can do for you here or for your family, please fill them in and submit it back at the registration counter. right? We are also going to give out some lucky winners, some $500 as well as $250 vouchers at the end of the sessions today. So yes, we will be having that giveaway for some lucky winners later today. Right? We will be having scheduled coffee breaks later down the line. Hot coffee, tea, and a selection of light tarts and pastries are available at the lounge. Please do join us there, and you can also network during that time. Washrooms are located on the left wing of the building. The ushers would be able to guide you if you're across the foyer, right? The entire event will be filmed for, again, archival purposes as well as for the media. So as a courtesy for our speakers, try to remain seated during the sessions and avoid moving in and out of the doors, right? Please take a quick moment right now to turn your mobile phones to silent if they haven't, or vibrate if they haven't been already, right? While photography is highly encouraged, please don't use flashes during this session, right? When you post these photos, don't forget to tag us. We are very much live on social media, so you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn, right? To officially set our journey in motion and share the grand vision behind this summit, please join me in welcoming to the stage our founder and CEO, Joash Lee.
It was through this very full circle journey in the educational consulting industry that I saw that there was this gap and students didn't have access to these opportunities.
We are in unprecedented times, so we never know what might happen.
People talk about profit and purpose, but I think there's a layer in between, and that is performance.
We want to democratize that process for students who might not be able to afford a traditional consultant.
Starting with that purpose and seeing that real problem to be solved has really served us well. Students working with us are up to 10 times more likely to get into a college of their choice, into their dream school. I would like to think that we are a purpose-driven firm, and purpose is embedded in the DNA at the core of what we do.
Please welcome Joash Lee, founder and CEO of Sedifly.
A very good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joash, founder and CEO of Sedifly, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to Sedifly's inaugural Future Student Summit. Today, the world is in a fragile state. We're living in some uncertain times. Just months ago, headlines were dominated by escalating wars and geopolitical conflicts, with major powers creating ripples felt across economies and societies. Yet amid these geopolitical tensions, humans innovate like never before, shaping industries, supply chains, and opportunities across the globe. In less than a week from now, SpaceX is set to make history with its almost US $2 trillion IPO, a marker of ambition, innovation, and progress in the face of uncertainty. In this era of rapid change, volatility is the new normal. The only constant is change. We must adapt in such uncertain times, and that is exactly why we're all here today. Not just to get into college or level up in education, but to prepare for the next wave of disruption, build real aptitude, and to take ownership of the future. Your future. Today, I'm joined by some of the most influential investors and founders. Some of you might be familiar with these names: Insignia Venture Partners, Golden Gate Ventures, Saison Capital, to the founder of Southeast Asia's largest talent recruitment platform, Glints, as well as Singapore's largest co-living operator. I also want to take this chance to share a quick word about Sedifly, as well as my background in the industry. I have had a very full circle journey in the educational consulting space, first as a student, working not just with one, not two, but with 3 educational consulting firms, before I realized a gap in the market. I then built products for the world's largest educational consulting firm and brought that from zero to over $20 million in annual revenue, before now founding Sedifly. The issue that we're solving is that we realize most educational consulting firms price students out of the market. Beyond this, they focused not just on getting students into college, but they also lacked the career skills that students require for the future. And that is why here at Sedifly, we don't just believe in opening doors to college, but in preparing you to walk through them and succeed in careers and life. Our goal isn't just to help you get accepted, but to ensure you're fully equipped to thrive in an ever-competitive landscape. Our network has gone on to secure internships at leading investment banks, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, you name it, top tech companies, OpenAI, Google, VC firms, fast-growing startups, and many more. We have complimentary Discovery Week sessions for our students to understand their strengths and weaknesses before deciding whether or not to work with us in a program. And we pair our students with the creme de la creme of mentors, from sending some of them to the World Economic Forum in Davos for intimate lunches or dinners with Fortune 500 CEOs under our Greenhouse program, to retreats behind closed doors with college admissions officers to reveal what it takes for you to win the game. In terms of student outcomes, all of our students, 100%, have been accepted to at least one of their top 5 choices. But more importantly, all of these schools that our students were accepted to were global top 20 schools. You'll be hearing from some of our students in the student panel later on. Our team has secured over 150 acceptances to US top 20 and UK G5 schools, of which 30% are from the Ivy League or Oxbridge. This is because of our aptitude cultivation framework, focusing on building skills and knowledge that align with a student's long-term career goals. And our leadership has an average of 10 years in the industry. So at times like this, when the world is full of chaos and uncertainty, education is more important now than ever. We must adapt to survive, and we are here to guide you every step of the way. Next up, Ananya, our head of program, has a big conversation with the founder of the Assembly Place, Singapore's largest co-living operator that went public just a few months ago. Thank you.
Even as a founder, as an entrepreneur, right, sometimes I feel ignorant is bliss. If you analyze too much, you will not get things moving one.
Please welcome Eugene Lim, founder and CEO of the Assembly Place, for a conversation with Sedifly's Ananya Ann.
My mic.
Welcome everyone to our sponsor spotlight. If you're a student wondering how your degree translates to the real world, a parent thinking about your child's career, or a young person dreaming of launching a successful career, right? Today's guest is exactly who you want to listen to. Eugene, thanks for being here. Let's start where a lot of youngsters in this area are, headed, university. When you were a student studying for your degree at University of London, you weren't just attending lectures. You were actively leading a team of over 300 property agents to pay your way through education. For the students and parents present here who think that you have to choose between getting good grades or getting a real-world experience, how did doing both at the same time prepare you to become an entrepreneur?
Thank you so much for having me. Maybe I just clarify a bit that my degree, I did an external degree at University of London through Singapore Institute of Management, SIM. So I think seated down here with a lot of young people today, I'm not the modern student compared to most of you here. Most of you are here, wanting to know how to gain access to the Ivy League. The reason why I was in SIM because during my junior college, I played rugby for my high school for 2 years. I played rugby every day, so much so that I really didn't do well for my A-level. So, my parents didn't have the means to send me to overseas for university. So I have to go to SM to pursue the degree. And during the second year of my university, in order to pay for my school fee, I think we had parents here during my time. SIM is a private university, so my parents couldn't utilize their CPF to pay for my tuition fee, unlike if you are in NUS, NTU, or SMU. So having served the national service for 2.5 years, I was in the commando for 2.5 years. So I was feeling very ashamed. How could I, still get, money from parents, And my mom have to come out from her retirement to work so that she can pay for my school fee. So second year, I couldn't do it. So I went into the real estate industry as a street broker. Those days, there's no CEA. So the irony was that the idea was to really make $10,000 to pay for my tuition fee. But I guess I did well. As a part-timer, I make around 130,000. That was in 2002. 230,000 is a lot of money. So then I realized that, hey, I can make a career out of real estate. By the end of year 2 in real estate, I got 300 salesperson under me. And the irony part is that until today, I still hold the record in SIM, University of London, as being the student who took the longest to graduate. It took me 8 years to graduate. And 8 years is the end. After 8 years, you are condoned and you have to start from ground zero again. And the lecturer were pleading for me not to give up. Yeah. So I guess back to the question where, pursuing education and having the real life experience, I think one has to be very, very curious. Education is important. Now, if I look back at my own journey, I don't think I would be who I am if I didn't take the unconventional path. But I also wouldn't, really advise, anyone to take the path that I took, because it feels with a lot of hardship, a lot of pain. We hustle a lot. We, as an entrepreneur, you have to keep the lights on a daily basis. You just want to ensure that you got enough to pay for your staff salary. You sacrifice a lot of hustling. But I will always encourage young people to have a very curious mind. I think the world has changed a lot. We saw there's a big talk about AI. So, my thoughts about AI is that I don't think we'll lose our job to AI, but I think we'll lose job to individuals who adopt AI aggressively. So keep a curious mind. I think that's what I would like to share with the young people, whether you go to the Ivy League university or you stay back to pursue a degree in Singapore. Yep.
Thank you, Eugene. Yes, I agree with you that there needs to be some sort of hustle and curiosity, because a degree itself doesn't mean that you are successful in life. So yes, thank you for that. Another question for you would be, you left a secure, prestigious corporate role as a director once you've established yourself at a major developer to start this business from scratch, right? Like one house, few rooms. So would you say starting small, focusing on immediate cash flow is the right way to go? I'm asking for the entrepreneurs who are here in mind.
I don't know how many entrepreneurs we have here today. I'm brought up in a very traditional Chinese family. So in Chinese, they say, 你做事要踏实. You need to be very grounded. So in all business, when you do, always think of it as you have to first be involved in a startup that's able to solve problems at large in the society. Many a time we saw a lot of entrepreneurs. I personally invest in a lot of startups. So I always look at them and say that, you are here for fame or you are here for the fluff, because we have seen so many startups that say that, I want to build a business from 0 to 1,000. Everybody wants to be Elon Musk. Everybody wants to be a Jensen Wang. There's nothing wrong, with having big dream. But sometimes it's also important that we do not daydream, and we have to bring ourselves constantly back to earth and say that, look, is this a really legit business and can solve issues to begin with? So I think that's really not, there's no playbook as in whether as a startup, as an entrepreneur, should you take money from the PE or should you take money from the VC or should you take money from angel investor. I was very clear when I set up the assembly place that I'm here to solve a housing solution, because rental was expensive, access to good, affordable, competitive rooms is pretty out of touch in Singapore, because Singapore real estate is expensive. So when I started a business, I was very clear. I refused to take money from venture capitalists. Because I look at it, I say that, look, I'm not here to build revenue. I'm here to build a business. And I'm here to ensure that, I built a business that's resilient, that I don't look at revenue, I look at bottom line. And I think I was the only co-living company back in 2019 who refused to take a single cent from the VC. As I say, there's nothing wrong with taking money from VC, but it really depends on what you want. I more traditional in a way, I want to build this business from point A to point B to point C. So that's how I run the business personally. Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about the title of this session, Zero to IPO, right? For the aspiring business and finance minds here today, why is building a solid, profitable local business and taking it public a much smarter goal than chasing what you talked about, abstract, hyper-valued valuation numbers?
I don't know. I invest in stocks and shares. Sometimes people like us, investor, we like to, punting. We invest in those very high risk stock that can give you multiplier return, whether it's a space industry, medical industry. So for my business, it's a real estate business. It's still a very traditional business. So we look more at the PE function. So going to IPO, it was a very natural route for us. In fact, we didn't expect, I didn't build the business thinking that I will go IPO. We always tell ourselves that, first of all, the first year when we build the business, it's really about the proof of concept. Can the market accept this product? So 1 year on, we realized, okay, there's supply, there's demand. We don't burn. We have been profitable since day one, and I refuse to take any money from the bank. So we went to friends and family to raise some small capital. That's how it really started. Year 2, we begin to scale the business. So year 1, proof of concept. Year 2, scaling the business to see whether are we fast enough to, fill in the gap of this addressable market of co-living. So by year 3, we are able to do that. By year 4, then you realize that can the market at large believe in us? When I say the market at large believe in us, many segments of the market. Would a PE fund believe in us? Would a VC look at it and say, hey, there's opportunity? Would the real estate fund look at us? And most importantly, will government look at us? So that was when, back in 2023, you realized that even our government also, like SLA, start tendering land and say that we welcome co-living, as an alternative housing solution. So once we have captured that, then we realized, okay, market need to accept us. So when the market begin to accept us, coupled with good financial, then that's when we realized that maybe going to the public market, it is the right move because you want people to subscribe to your share. You want that you are heavily, overly subscribed, which we have been successful. 23rd January when we went listing, you will never imagine, 48 hours before IPO, people were calling me. Friends I didn't contact for a few years, family members started calling me, say, hey, I tried to subscribe to your share, can you give me private allocation? Then that's when I realized, okay, I think the market really accept us at large. In fact, we only decided to go public last year, June. So, and we took us very fast. I think we were one of the fastest. It took us 6 months that we are able to list the company. So one thing, advice is back to all the entrepreneurs, if your thought process is that you want to list the company 2-3 years from now, the hygiene side of running the company is extremely important. Keep your accounts clean, have an overqualified finance person to help you to manage your business. So I always tell all entrepreneurs, when your business reaches a certain maturity, there's 2 persons that is very critical to your business. One is finance. So I hired an overqualified CFO 3 years ago. So when we decided to go IPO last year, 6 months, I say I want to IPO in 6 months. So even the auditor look at me, I say, you sure 6 months? Nobody has done that. The fastest was 9 months. I say, don't worry, because I know my accounts is very clean. And true enough, we are able to achieve that. Yeah. Second one is to have someone with a good legal background to help you to do structuring work. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Right, so one final question. If there's a piece of advice you'd want to give to the young minds here who wants to start a business but is afraid of, say, taking the first risk, what would be the first thing that you would say they have to map out?
I think clarity of mind is very important. Running a business, I always tell the young people that, today you're with your parents, today when you go to school, you have the protection of the institution. But once you are an entrepreneur, you are out in the open world. Nobody is going to save you, should things turn south. So I always advise all the entrepreneurs, it takes a lot of heart, it takes a lot of courage to run the business. Take heart, and most importantly, have a lot of clarity, and very, very important as an entrepreneur, be very nimble and be very forward thinking. Plan A can't work out, go for plan B. Keep pivoting and keep having a curious mind to be forward thinking. Then that's when you are able to succeed, and do not be stubborn in your own way.
Thank you, Eugene. Thank you for sharing what relentless execution looks like. From 6 rooms to oversubscribed IPO, everybody please give it up for Eugene Lim.
Please welcome Tak, VP of Student and Career Development at Sedifly.
Okay, yeah. So thanks everyone for joining us today in our Future Summit event. Right? Maybe I start with the introduction of myself. My name is Tak. At Sedifly, I'm the Vice President of Student and Career Development overseeing service delivery. I graduated from Cambridge. I was doing a PhD in NUS as well. So the full journey throughout the academic journey, and actually still working in academia at Astronomical Research Institute in Thailand. So I've helped quite a lot of students, mostly on the UK side, getting into top universities. But today, my sharing will be more on how you can bridge, I think pretty much what Eugene was sharing to us now, building a solid, right, a future-proof career, but starting not after your graduation, right? You can actually start from now. Okay. Okay, of course, we can't go away with that without talking about the nature of the job market, right? Sharing some interesting statistics on the right-hand side about the jobs that have the highest demands, just in the US, right? I think in Singapore it might have a little bit different context. Back about 10 years, right, 2017, we were seeing financial advisors, software engineer, security analysts. Of course, data science was already there. But then 10 years afterwards, we're still seeing some of the jobs there, right? Data scientists, registered nurse. We realize the top, like the other 3 have already been replaced by something. So it's changing all the time. So the career landscape is changing all the time to the point that I start thinking that maybe the safe industry does not really exist anymore. Back in the time, right, we talked about 20 years before, I believe we talked about medicine. I think that still like pretty much applies, right? But many other industries have sort of gone saturated and kind of expired with the time. So how us as a student or family, maybe the parents, right, were thinking about the future of your kids, how do we prepare for that, ever-changing job market? And to me, the answer to that is actually to develop the transferable skills that you can use, not just for a specific career path, right? It's something that you can also apply in other jobs that you might not be aiming for at the start. Okay, and we talk about top universities, right? US, UK, or even Singapore. We want to think why actually we should be thinking about getting top universities, of course, rankings, elitism, prestige. Yeah, we often think about this as like a badge that leads to a better job and social status. Of course, we have access to the alumni that will be going right into pretty much a lot of firms that are very prestigious, and success is often associated with the recognition that comes with a university name. But if we think about the framework that we just mentioned in the first slide, right, that what we want for a future-proof career is not just the name of the university, but it's actually the transferable skills that you can use for the rest of your life, not just 10 years, 15 years after graduation, but for the rest of your life. So we view these metrics again, right? The actual prestige that comes with going to the top university is actually being able to be trained in one of the world's most rigorous academic environment. Yep. For the alumni, yes, those friends you'll be meeting, right, at Stanford, Princeton, or Cambridge, they, right, will enter the elite professional networks, but at the same time, while you're being surrounded by them, you're being surrounded by one of the brightest minds in the world, right? So you would want to take that chance to elevate your growth, right? Learning from their perspectives, learning from what they have to teach you, and maybe they are also learning from you, right? As one of the experts in the field that you have been studying in. And lastly, the success, right, doesn't come from universities you go to, but it comes from the fact that you are being trained to become a thinker. And I think this is like very important, and it's also important to me as a person as well that I went to Cambridge myself. The university, the place, and the people train me, right, to be a thinker that I can eventually contribute meaningfully in any fields or any careers I ever hop in. So, top universities, right? Asia, US, and UK. Let's look at the landscape of where these global universities are. I'm showing you the 2026 QS World University Ranking, and we can see that 80% of these top universities are coming from the US. All the questions, right? US and UK are still one of the best places in the world to get in. And then the choice, right, is, again, if we go back one slide, right, it's no longer about the prestige. It's more about being able to be trained, right, in the world's most academically rigorous environment. Yeah. So US, UK, still a destination, right, for the students who are looking to train themselves in that way. We're also seeing our local university, NUS, right, made it to the top. But if we are really to differentiate, not to say like what's the best or the worst, right? But we try to differentiate these universities beyond the ranking. Where else can we look at? And the answer is to understand, right? When you go into the course, the program universities, what will you actually be studying? So I'm giving you a case study, a comparison of mechanical engineering program at Imperial College in the UK, MIT in the US, and of course, back home, NUS. Yeah. So the duration is shorter for bachelor program in the UK, right? 3 years for bachelor program, but it's very common that you can couple an integrated master year, so plus 1 year, right, to that 3 years, and then you earn both bachelor and master degrees in studying at Imperial College in the UK. Why in MIT and US, and actually Singapore and US alike, you have 4 years to complete the bachelor degree. So I think this duration, people tend to think of it in terms of the ROI, right? Return of investment. But the shorter timeline that you have in the UK actually implies something very important. Because if you look at the cost structure of the UK side, right? Every year, they will be teaching you the mechanical engineering core modules specializations. This is because by the time you apply to Imperial College or even Cambridge and Oxford, you would have been expected to have chosen your specialization, right? Say you want to do an engineering degree, it's not just mechanical engineering. It's not just engineering or other majors you need to decide, but it's which kind of engineering, mechanical, chemical, biochemical, right? But the longer timeline for the US and Singapore, I think, allows us a little bit more flexibility, right? Although it's true that for many of the US universities, you still have to declare the major when you are going in, right? But most universities will not really fix you to a major until the end of the first year. So as we see for the MIT case, right, you can pretty much study any modules available in MIT, do your job, right, to explore what you really like. Apparently, it has to be the choices that are offered by MIT, right? And second year, you get to declare your major, and after that, right, you just keep specializing forward. Yep. NUS, I think pretty much similar to what happens in MIT, right? I think the addition will be that they added the common curriculum, which is more like a general education, that I think also exists in part of MIT curriculum. So I think this is the first insight of today's talk, that understanding the structure of the intern program, I think, is the first step to designing your career path. Why is that? Right? First one, early specialization, right? UK versus US or even Singapore. By the time you finish your high school study, have you already decided what you want to be? As a mechanical engineer, is a scientist, like astrophysicist like myself, you want to be a consultant, or what do you want to be? If you have already decided, maybe going for a more specialized route like in the UK is a better option. But if you need more time to explore, going for the US or even Singapore might be a better option for you. So I think the cost structure of these different universities also reflect what they are looking for, right, in their ideal candidates. Of course, in the UK, you want to be specialized, not just from day one, even before you join the universities, right? So they're looking for people with deep expertise in a subject or a major that you're applying to. So in the US, right, it's slightly different. Not that they discard the specialism totally, right? They still want you to be kind of specialized in some way. You need to know what your area of expertise is, but that's not everything they're looking for. They're also looking for people who can contribute, right, to the society, to the community that you are part of. So it's a breadth of experience plus a specialization, like a deep specialization in one area that you intend to major in. So we can compare what the top UK and US universities are looking for in these two types of profiles, right? The I-shape, right, depth only, right? You want to go as deep as possible, or within the reach of a high school student, of course, yeah. But while in the US, right, we still want that depth to be there, but then you also want the breadth to be there. Yeah. Other than what you are specialized in, what else have you looked out for, right? What else have you done outside of your studies to see how else you can contribute other than a specialist in the major that you are studying in. And of course, that philosophy is reflected in their admission requirements. I'm going to go through this line by line, the academics. So the categories above, right? I'm actually looking at the top university in UK, US, and Singapore. And you would realize that the grades requirements or the expectation do not really vary too much, right? So if you want to go to places like Stanford or like all the Ivies, and same at Oxford and G5, pretty much you have to get the straight A's, right? One slight difference will be how universities treat these grades that you're predicted for or you already achieved. For the UK, it's a hard cutoff, right? Which means you definitely have to get these grades to be able to consider for other parts of your application. But then for the US, the admission is more holistic. Good grades are the good starts, but it's not everything that counts, right? So they will be looking at the other activities that you do as well in combination with your grades before they make a decision whether to give you an offer or not. Now, the second row, activities, right? The UK, right, I-shape, right? Only expertise in the field that you have chosen. So we talk about the term supercurriculars, right? That's exactly the activities that go beyond the classroom, but it's still within the subject that you try to pursue. Let's say for my case, an example, right? I wanted to study astrophysics, so what I did was to join the Astronomical Olympiad or Astrophysical Olympiad. Many of my friends did that well because they were really interested in the subject that they want to study: physics, maths, astronomy, so on, right? So supercurriculars are the center of the UK, the type of activities that the UK universities require. While in the US, that expectation remains, right? We still want a specialization. We still want the expertise to be shown on our application. But on top of that, you also want to have, you also need to add the breadth of the non-academic interests. We talk about what? We talk about self-initiated projects, right? That shows your leadership, your problem-solving skills. We talk about service community, volunteering. Of course, you are very good at your studies. What else can you contribute, right, as part of this community that you are living in, right? And then we have, of course, like some more details, right? The number of activities that you have to submit for the different kinds of applications that you can launch for the US. Singapore side, I think we're definitely focusing on the grades, right? But I think NUS, both NUS and NTU are adopting slightly different approach. I think they call it aptitude-based admission. So they're not just looking at your grades anymore, but if you have, completed some high-impact activities, they would be willing to consider as part of your application too. DSAs, which I feel one of the most important part of the US and UK application, because it's the only way that you can use to tell your unique journey into why you're applying to this major or this university, right? In the UK, we only have one personal statement. This is submitted through the UCAS, 4,000 characters. That's not long. It's just one A4 page. Yeah. While in the US, again, one personal essay that you submit through the Common App, but then you will have to write many other college-specific supplemental essays. So they'll be asking you questions, right, only specific to that college. Say it's Chicago or maybe Harvard. They have like different sets of questions, and that actually is the time that takes. That's actually the part that takes most time for the candidates applying to the US. For Singapore, less common, but some majors still do it, like law, medicine, PPE. But most students, I think, would be admitted without having to write the essays. Okay, so we look at that table, right? The academics, the essays, and the activities. And one thing that we observe is that the admission officers nowadays, right? I think 50 years back, 40 years back, maybe it was still the grades that are important. Nowadays, this is, I think, very important, like the excellent grades has become a baseline, right? If you want to get into top university, getting good grades alone are not enough. Secondly, you really want to utilize your essays effectively, right? You don't just want to write about anything that other people can also talk about. You will really want to reflect on your own journey, right? Why do I want to do this major? Why do I want to study here? And I believe, at least, from the sample of students that I have worked with, they all have a unique journey. It's just how you tell that, right, to the admission officers. And the last one, the academic culture fit, right? So we think about top universities as like blocks that we have to fit in. But I think we want to reverse that thinking as well, that the universities are kind of, we also want to, we fit into them, right? But they also have to fit into us. I think later, when we go into the student panel, I think our student will probably be able to share about her journey into choosing, right, the university in the US, that she later realized that the dream college that she wanted to apply to was actually not the best one that she was hoping for. But when she going to that university, and she felt like the culture fit is much better for her. Okay, so we talk about the admission landscape, but I kind of want to project back, right, to the career stability a little bit. Just now I was picking up from Eugene's talk that for Eugene, right, it was building career in entrepreneurship, like an entrepreneurial career. But I realized that pretty much a lot of skills or the points that Eugene has mentioned in his talk is also applicable, right, to not just a career as an entrepreneur. Say you want to build something, right? You want to be an astrophysicist, you want to be a mathematician, or maybe you want to be a data scientist. First, you want to start by knowing what that is, like a clarity. Right? I think that was the key word that he used, clarity of what you actually want to be. Now, when we map it to what I want to do, right, for my high school activities, instead of mapping it to, okay, some people might be randomly mapping, I want to do this, I want to do that, right? Just go like all over the place. You definitely want to map it to the skills that you actually require to perform well in the career path that you're targeting, right? So here we come to the aptitude cultivation framework. So the question to ask, right, what are the skills that I need to excel in my target career, or maybe the major that you want to get into? Of course, there are the hard and the soft skills. There's some that are more applicable for the STEM candidates, there's some that are more applicable to the humanities candidates, but still, right, it's a mixture of skills that you, even with a STEM background, can also use if you're developing for something else. So we try to map these skills, right? Once you identify, okay, say I want to become a mechanical engineer, maybe I should be able to code, I should be able to problem solve really well, but sometimes I have to be able to communicate, right, to my teamwork. So you start identifying, right, these skills that you need. Then you can map it to the type of activities that directly help you hone the skills that you need. Okay, I'm not going to go into the details of this, right? Because apparently the list of activities that we have here is not exhaustive, right? There are many, many other activities that you can do. But yeah, it's just a framework for you to start thinking about whatever you do right now doesn't just shape how competitive your university application will be, but it also will shape the kind of career that you will be in. Because it shapes a certain skill now, it doesn't just go into universities, right? It goes very, very long way. Okay, so we look at that slide, right? Very general, very abstract. Now I'm translating it into what those means, what that means, right? If you're projecting this onto the major, some popular majors that you can think of, right? Engineering, I think I did give an example, right? Problem solving, quantitative reasoning, teamwork. Yeah, don't forget that. I think most of the engineers work with a team, right? They don't work alone. And design thinking, I think this is something that most of my students don't think about, right? You don't just want to be able to solve problem in physics and maths, but you want to be able to design something real, something physical, something that works as well. In business and finance, which I think some of our audience are kind of here for that, of course, the industry awareness, right, decision making, finance specifically, I think quantitative analysis is something that they're looking for. And those right activities on the right are some suggested activities, right, not exhaustive again, that universities are looking for. So career planning, career positioning, I think starts much earlier than you think, right? Not after your graduation, not during your degree, but actually now when you are still a high school student. All right, so I'll be ending my talks with the key takeaways, right? First one, right, we maximize our growth and I think our career development. And one of the ways to do that, I think, is consider going to top universities, not because of the prestige, but because of the kind of training that they offer and the people that will be surrounding ourselves in. Second, be intentional, right? Know your goal. Whether it's a major, whether it's a university, know why you are going there, right? Know exactly what they are looking for. And the last one, I think, which is the same insight I just delivered, career positioning does not start after your graduation. It starts now. So think carefully what you do now. It will shape your career for the rest of your life. Okay, so thanks a lot. I think I might be going a little bit over time. So I think I just want to emphasize that there were the forms, right? The readiness form handed out to you. Yeah, handed out to you. So you might want to fill that in, and then you can drop it at our registration desk. I think we'll be contacting you for free evaluation if you are interested. And then for those who fill the readiness form, they stand a chance to win the cash voucher to purchase a certified programs as well. And I think we might have a bit of time for questions, yes. So I think I'll be answering some questions before the time is up. But if we have more questions after this one, right, and also the student panel, you are very much welcome to join our Meet the Strategist session, which will be conducted just outside the area here. I and the strategist team will be there to meet you. So we'll be answering any questions you have about the admission. Yeah. Okay, so I'll be taking questions from the pigeonhole. Okay. So, are the hard skills as relevant now with the AI disruption? I think Eugene kind of answered that question. Not sure whether people catch it, right? So, AI disruption. How many of you still do not use AI for your work? Please raise your hands. Please. Everyone is using it. Really? Okay, first I have to admit, I also use it, right? So I think I want to share my experience, right? So I mean, here at Sedifly, I'm a vice president of student and career development, right? I'm mentoring my junior strategists. But outside of Sedifly, I'm also mentoring students, like graduate and undergraduate students in my research institute. A lot of times, I find the work that was, okay, I know it was done by AI, but then it was done totally by AI, but was not supervised by human. And then as a supervisor of this student, right, I know that the quality of work is different because the AI can give you the information that you requested for, but not necessarily something that your boss or your supervisors are looking for, or maybe what the industry that you're serving is actually needing. Okay, so hard skills like AI, hard skills I think are still important, not in the way that you would be doing those tasks yourself, but you will be the one who supervises the AI to do the task for you, right? If you just dump, a very blunt prompt, right? Give me this, give me that. It's going to give you something, but if you don't know what you're looking for, it's pretty much the same as what you try to do with your career development or what you're developing with your application, right? If you don't know what you're looking for, the AI gives you something. You don't know whether that's something that you would want to present to your boss or to your supervisors, okay? So I think the hard skills are still important, but not in the sense that you will be executing it yourself. The AI will help you. It helps expedite the process, right? But you still need to know how to do it. Okay, we have 2 more questions. Okay, a bit abstract, but I'll spell it out. Can you share a bit more on transferable skills and how predictable it can be in current disruptive environments? Yeah. So if we talk about, first, right, there are some skills that are always applicable. Does not matter which age, era, or which disruption you are going through. I think we can think of critical thinking. Yeah, that's the one. Problem solving, that's another one. I think teamwork and maybe leadership for some of them. I don't think like everyone is designed to be a leader. I don't think I was designed to be a leader, although I try to lead like the best I can, right? Because in the industry, or it doesn't matter where you go, you'll be working with people. So if you don't know how to work effectively with people, you don't know how to communicate effectively with the people, that's a no-go area. Yeah. So there's some kind of baseline skills like problem solving, critical thinking, teamwork, and maybe leadership, effective communication, right? Those are the things that, regardless of which major or universities or countries that you are going to, you definitely want to develop those. And go back to the list, right, that we just showed. I think there are many that you can use, right, to hone those skills. Other hard and soft skills that are more specific to majors, then you map it, right, to the majors that you want to go. I don't think I can say for sure that, say you code, like you push your kids to code now, and then you'll be using coding for the rest of your life. There might come a point where coding become like totally irrelevant. But again, like even with AI disruption, you still need to know how to code to supervise the AI, right? But I think that's a good start, right? You have to pick something, right? It's not like you remain a generalist forever. You have to pick something, but then, yeah, it might change over time. But what would help you hop, right, from one point to another, I think it's the core skills that I just mentioned. Critical thinking, teamwork, effective communication, and problem solving. Okay, we have 2 more questions. Okay, the advice on getting internship when you are still in high school. Okay, I think in junior colleges, there are some, right, that I know of, I'm not going to mention the name, that do offer like a integrated internship program even in secondary 4, even before you join JC, which is in secondary 4. In JC, of course, the more kind of opportunities become accessible not to just students in that schools, right? I think we do see the rise of numbers of internships offered by the government agency, like all the ministry, are offering those. Although, of course, it's going to be competitive, right? You have to fight for the place. If you don't know if you can't get it through that channel, the most straightforward way is to reach out, right? You think about what you want to do. Say, I want to be an engineer, right? And then I want to gain an experience from this. I'm willing to work for free for you as long as I get the experience. Reach out to them, craft a CV, send them out, right? Call them. If they see the values in what you are doing, they definitely would be able to consider your application. Yeah. So I think be proactive, right? And be confident in what you have done so far. And yeah, I think the employers are I think more than happy to take you in if they see the values in what you do. Okay, so I think we almost run out of time. I will answer like one last question. Okay. Can you share a success case of placement based on above average grades as a baseline and not the excellent grade? Okay, let me repeat that question. A success case of placement, so I think acceptance, right? Based on above average grades as a baseline, but not the excellent one. Let's say if it's IB, then it's not like 45 or 45. So in the UK, right, if you go look up the university website, then they will say quite specifically that these are the grades, the IB points, or how many A's or A stars they are looking for, right? So that is the strict requirement, right? It's a hard cutoff. So it's something that you have to meet for sure. But some other students might exceed that requirement. Right? But what universities would do is they will consider everyone or most of the people that have passed the minimum requirements. Yeah, and they look at other parts of the application and they make the final decision. In the US, I think it's more common to consider candidates who do not have maybe just above average but not excellent grades, just because the admission is holistic. Okay, I know my time is up, but I think we'll have more time for proper Q&A at the Meet the Strategy session, so do pop up if you have more questions to ask. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, and I'll passing the floor to someone else.
When I left Stanford, fear taught me courage through action. When I lost my startup and when I built Onigiri, fear taught me identity over achievement. Fear taught me conviction, even when others did not believe.
Please welcome Looi Chin An, partner at Saison Capital and managing partner of Onigiri Capital, for a conversation with Sedifly's Joash Lee.
Thank you, Sinan, for joining us today. Our next speaker is living proof of an overachiever. From co-founding Southeast Asia's largest talent recruitment platform, Glints, to launching BCG's venture building arm in Asia, and now partner at Saison Capital and managing partner at Onigiri Capital, two of Asia's leading VC funds, Sinan has done it all. Not to mention, he graduated from Stanford in 2 years with distinction and is a Forbes 30 under 30 listee. Sinan, what have you not done?
Many other things.
Yeah, I'm particularly excited for this panel, as I've known Sinan for a really long time and he's one of my most respected mentors, having worked with him years ago at Saison Capital. Sinan, it's really great to have you with us today. Let's start off by taking a trip back in time to 2013. So you founded Glints, you were doing national service and you were 18 then. How did you get the idea for Glints?
Sure. First off, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Feels a bit weird to hear all those being played out, but I'll just share my experience. The truth is none of this was really ever planned out, right? I actually grew up in what many of you would call tiger parenting household. Both my parents are in academia. My dad is a university professor all his life, and my mom is a secondary school Chinese teacher all her life. So whatever stereotypes you have about secondary school Chinese teachers, you could imagine what it's like to have that as your mom, right? So all along, I was brought up in an environment where obviously academic grades mattered. but also that was really all that matters, right? There was that belief that, hey, just get your good grades and life will be set ahead of you. The reality of that is that was my how I was brought up, and that was also my definition of success, which after a while I started to really dislike. Yes, I did get good grades because my mom would rush home from school every day to sit next to me and make sure I do my homework. It's not the most fun thing when you are in primary or secondary school. But I think what became very clear very quickly is that I actually wanted to get out of the Singapore system, right? Because I felt like, okay, I'm just doing this routine. It's CA, but at the time it was called CA, then SA, continuous assessment, semester assessment. It was just all about getting grades. And so I wanted to get out of it. So I made up my mind very quickly at the end of secondary 4 to early JC to say the only way for me to get out of this is to go overseas to study, right? I had the fortune of having an older brother who's 2 years. He went through the local system. I saw how hard he studied, and I'm like, I don't want that life, right? So for me, the choice was very clear: get out of Singapore system. Now, once again, we don't come from a particularly well-off household also, so really, at the end of the day, what it meant was I have to get a scholarship, right? And I made that very clear to my parents that if I don't get a scholarship, I will not go overseas. So that was the package deal. So my JC years was very intentional, spent about how do I build my profile to get into a top US college, right? I think earlier Tak shared about the differences between US, UK. I felt like UK was a bit too similar to Singapore, right? Once again, you study very hard. I had friends who were were going for they were comparing, right? What class honors do you have? Like, guys, we're done with that, right? I was done with that, right? So I was like, I wanted in US because I remember reading very clearly on Stanford University's website, and by the way, this is me not having traveled there a single time to the US. It says your grades will not be published on your university cert. I'm like, yes, right? Okay, this is the place that I want to go. So Stanford it was, and I really sort of gave it my all. Very fortunately, I got into Stanford. I did get multiple scholarship offers, and that was supposed to be the path, right? But as you know, Singaporean males need to go through military service. And so, okay, I told the school, please wait for me. I will serve my 2 years. So what happened was during national service, during my basic training, I fell sick and actually was, obviously was trying to gun for leadership school, like OCS or specialists. Didn't make it, right? And so basically didn't go to any leadership school of that. So that was also one of the most down moments because it's like, okay, you have really failed for the first time, right? So everything that I have wanted, I've gotten up to that point. And I felt like, okay, this is not particularly good use of my time. You really feel your brain degrading because, after 12 years of intensive, academics and training, just felt like, national service wasn't giving that mental stimulation. So that was when I went to what was then still Facebook groups and said, hey, guys, who wants to work? I'm happy to work for free, but here's the catch. I only can work on weekends, right? Because I am doing national service and I was stay-in combat vocation, right? So there was no sort of stay out. And as it turns out, there were people crazy enough to take a bet on me to say, hey, come work for us on Saturdays, right? Obviously, they wanted free labor, but I wanted the experience, right? And so that was really how it started. Now, one startup reached out, and then after a while, in a very short span of a few weeks, more and more startups started to ping me to say, hey, why not you come work for us for free, right? But then I only had 2 days in a week, right? Saturday, Sunday. I clearly could not serve more than one company. And that was when I started to say, hey, let me call up my other friends in national service, right, who are also potentially interested in this. So I called them up, and they too also started to do these sort of weekend internships. And that was when we really thought, hey, maybe there is something here, right? So what if we turn this to an internship matching platform, where on one side you have startups who need hands and legs but don't really have the money to pay. And on the other hand, you have hungry, motivated, but not very skilled people like myself who are willing to work for free. And so really with 2 Google spreadsheets, one spreadsheet with internships and one spreadsheet with talent, we started what today is now Glints, really connecting startups and talent together. So I've spoken a lot, but maybe returning the time back to you.
I think that's very insightful. And I personally didn't know that was the full story of how you started Glint. Now let's shift the discussion a little bit more. I think we talked a little bit about Stanford.
Yep.
You did Stanford for 1 year, and then you took a gap year. So what was the decision behind that, and how was that like for you?
Okay, so I was doing this for fun, and still on scholarship, still ready to go to Stanford, right? And so the time came, I ORD'd and was ready to go to school, but just at that point, and I still remember to this day, very grateful, someone actually came to us and said, hey, do you want some money to turn this into a business? And then at the point, we're like, oh, wow, we weren't really thinking of doing this as a business, right? This is just like a fun side project that we were doing. So I remember very vividly, me and my two co-founders, we were like, okay, let's sit down, let's come up with some random numbers on a sheet called the financial projections. And then the next week, we went back to the person and said, hey, we think we need $50,000 US to get this started. And the person said, sure. And then we're like, oh, so that's it? Like that easy? So I remember the first question I asked him after that, how do you incorporate a company, right? Because we're that blur and didn't know anything. Thankfully, he guided us through how to incorporate a company, and he invested at $50,000. We made him a lot of money, but that's besides the point. But that was really sort of when a project turned into a company, right? Now, we then decided to still start college and try to run the business while we were in US. I was at Stanford, my two other co-founders, one at Wharton, at UPenn, and the other at Berkeley, right? At 18 or 19 years old, you believe you can do anything in the world, right? So we believed that we could run a business here in Singapore while studying. So all of us happily flew on scholarship to US, and we started school. Obviously, very quickly it broke down, right? We very quickly realized that things don't run by itself, right? We always thought that, hey, build it and people would come. Obviously not. And so it came to a point where we had to make a decision, right? Either we continue the college path and sort of just come back to serve our scholarship, or we actually focus on the startup. And this was actually one of the most difficult times that I had to go through, because there's no right or wrong decision, right? How do you decide this? Now, my parents obviously had a huge say in that, right? They were like, you have the dream life, the dream path, right? Why give it up? But I think really after 3 months of really going back and forth, I actually made a very hard decision to leave Stanford and actually break the scholarship, right? And obviously, once again, to secondary school Chinese teacher, university professor, parents, it's more than just the money, right? It's also about the promise that you have made. But it was really difficult because I not only had to break the scholarship, I had to pay it back with 10% compounded interest. And I had to borrow from my parents, right, to do that, because obviously we didn't have money at that point. My parents were obviously very supportive, even though they were not happy, which is something I'm grateful for. And so broke the scholarship, and 3 of us, we moved back to Singapore to focus on building the company. So I spent 6 months at Stanford at that point, then came back. And I think when we came back was really the turning point for the company. I think before then it was a fun side project, right? If it works, sure, great. But I think the point when we actually came back was when it's like, okay, this is real, right? Like we all have, like literally I was in negative net wealth, right? Because I had owed money to my parents and I promised them I would pay them back. So this was really when we went all into the business and really committed to make it work, right? Because this is like, there's no 没有回头路走, right? There's no back door, there's no back path. We have to make this work. So really that was the journey. Obviously, you saw some of those headlines earlier, but behind that, it's a very real and difficult decision that I had to go through.
Yeah, I think for any founder, you see all these glamorous, media features, big events, large galas, but behind closed doors, it's actually a really challenging situation. Yep. I was just curious, so for any student entrepreneurs or student builders or founders who are interested in taking down that path, it's a huge leap of faith. Yep. Would you have any words of advice for them, maybe just 1 to 2 lines or something that, they could consider?
Yeah, I think most important is to always start small and de-risk it, right? I think on the headlines, people thought, wow, these guys are like ballsy, right? Leave school and all that. What people didn't know at that point is we had raised some level of funding, right? And not just on the angel, we had raised $500,000, which is a lot back then, not a lot now. But we have raised some level of capital. We already had some customers, and obviously we had a semblance of a business going, right? Not a large one, not a profitable one, but something there. So it wasn't exactly like a blind thing to say so people always ask us, right, hey, does it mean, you recommend people to drop out? The answer is no, right? For us, we actually built the business for more than a year. obviously on a part-time, not so committed basis, but there was enough traction and validation for us to make the leap, right? So the idea is, or the advice I always have, it's if you have something, think about what's the easiest and fastest way to start it, and start it small, right? You don't have to do the big thing right away. You don't have to quit school, and I don't recommend doing that. I went back to school in the end. But yeah, I think that's really sort of the thing, right? Start small, de-risk every decision that you make.
Yeah, I think start small, de-risk, and then grow big. That's a very important point for any of the founders. So I was curious, like, so you know, you're to Stanford, there's obviously Glints, and then afterwards you decided to go back to Stanford to compete. So what was behind that decision?
Yeah, so I think since you guys all took your weekend here, I figured I would give you the real deal of what happened, right? Look, after I left the company about 4 years in because of co-founder disagreement. And at the point, I was really figuring out what to do next with my life, right? Do I go back to school, which obviously, once again, my parents wanted. But at that point, I was thinking, hey, why not let's go out and explore careers out there, right? Because since I've built a business already. That was when I learned something very real, which is in the job market today, it is still very much dependent on what school you go to and also what logos you have on your CV. Right? I learned that the hard way because I worked 4 years building up a recruitment company before I left. I applied to companies like Google and Meta that were started by college dropouts for their most entry-level recruiter positions, and none of them ever got back. Right? And that was the biggest wake-up call for me. Right? At the point, I was like, actually, I was very angry. Because I'm like, guys, do you know how hard it is to actually build a recruitment business? At the point that I left, we already had made more than $1 million in revenue annually, right? So it's like, it's a proper business. I had built the company not just in Singapore, but in Indonesia, and we just opened up Vietnam. I was like, you know, for a recruiter, this is as good as it gets, right? Like, you know, I've shown you I could have done it. You won't even give me an interview I'm not even asking for any manager position, right? Entry-level recruiter position, none of them got back. Right? And so that was really such a huge wake-up call. And the answer is very simple, right? There's the job market is out there. There's always many candidates per position. Why would they give this college dropout a chance when they have a bunch of qualified on paper, at least, right? Whether they are qualified, that's a separate story. But at least qualified on paper candidates, why would they bother with this, right? So that was when I decided, okay, go back to school. And the moment I went back to school, even before I graduated, the story totally changed, right? The moment I was back at Stanford, all the top tier companies, including consulting where I ended up, started to invite you, tea sessions, you want one-on-one chats with our people, come talk to us, right? Who do you want to talk to? You know, a day in the life, feel free to shadow us. With banks, they were doing this, consulting firms were doing this. So I think that was when it was also a very big realization, right? It's like, yes, you can have all these skills and knowledge, but if you don't have the right sort of credentials to back it up, if you don't have the right logos to back it up, which is really what many of you are here for, it can really get hard to stand out, right? And if you don't even have the platform to demonstrate your skills and abilities, then sometimes you don't even get a shot at all.
I think that's the power of having a really good, a college degree from a prestigious institution like an Ivy League or an Oxbridge. And you very accurately pointed it out, right? I think for fresh graduates, new jobs, there's so many different candidates in the market. How do these companies actually filter and decide who to pick? Yep. And oftentimes a college degree serves as a proxy when there's lack of experience. Now, so going back to the Stanford a little bit more, right? How did that experience at Stanford shape you? So, you mentioned there were coffee chats, there were different things. How did that then translate to later on? You were one of the first hires at BCG Digital Ventures. You built out the Asia arm. BCG, for those of us who lack that context, it's Boston Consulting Group. It's one of the 3 largest consulting groups, management consulting groups in the world. So, what do you?
Yeah, so when I went back to Stanford, then it became very clear what my objective was, right? And that was by luck, but also some planning, that I managed to graduate early, because I knew that, okay, I'm in it not really to learn, but I'm just there to graduate in the fastest, shortest time possible, in the cheapest way possible, right? So that I can get that logo on my resume, right? I mean, that it might not be the case for everyone over here, but that was at least the intention when I went in, right? And this was also because I built the company for 4 years, right? So I felt like I had learned a lot more than going back to the classroom. Now, coming out from that, I also wanted to get experience to complement my previous startup experience, back when we were building Glints, our customers were mostly small and medium enterprises, right? So when it comes towards how to engage, how to sell, how to work with these guys, I felt very comfortable. But I never understood how does it like to work with the largest companies in the world, your MNCs and all that. So I felt that was a gap in my experience, which was why I felt consulting is a good place to do that. But also consulting is a nice place because you stay for 2 years, you leave, you move on. People don't really ask questions, right? Because that's the common thing to do. So I was very clear once again that this was something that I wanted to do for a temporary period of time to really complement my experience and go out from there.
Okay, yeah, I think that's really good. You brought up some really important points. So now you're on the other side of the table as an investor now. You have both experience as a founder building Southeast Asia's largest talent recruitment platforms, and then you went to BCG Digital Ventures. Now you're an investor, right? So as investors, we know that serial entrepreneurs have an advantage when raising VC funds. Oftentimes, venture capitalists do what's known as a founder's bet, whereby they invest even when a founder doesn't have an idea, but they invest because they believe the founder will go out there to build something. But that's for serial entrepreneurs. You were very uniquely positioned because you raised funds as a student. So first, how? And second, as an investor, what do you look out for when backing first-time founders? And more specifically, for student founders who oftentimes can't commit full-time to the business.
Yeah. I think really it comes down to two things, right? Exceptionalism and relationships. So maybe let me expand on each one more. I think for exceptionalism, that's something that I would encourage everyone in this room to really think hard about, which is what is one area or one aspect that you can really stand out and differentiate yourself. And here's the breaking news, right? It doesn't have to be the same for the rest of your life. So for me, the exceptionalism that helped me get into Stanford is nothing. I have nothing to do with it today, right? What happened was in secondary 3, I had an opportunity to do a research stint at one of the A-star institutes, which is in Singapore. And then I saw an opportunity to keep on continuing it. Now, what was the insight there is that all my other friends who were doing it, there were many of us, right? There was like 20, 30 of us in secondary 3, but everyone just stayed for 6 months, right? So I actually, at the end of 6 months, went to my professor at that point and said, hey, once again, can I continue this on, right? I've been doing this work. Research never ends, right? Like there's always stuff to do. So can I just continue on? And the professor said, sure, why not, right? And so just because of that, I actually built up like 2.5, 3 years of research experience and sort of achievements, such that when I applied to Stanford, like it just throwed everyone. I think it just stood out, right? At the point where I applied to Stanford, I actually had already published 10 research papers in the domain that I was in, right? So that was what got me in. And in my application, which I still have, and I look back once in a while, it says with ultimate absolute clarity in the application, I'm going to do computer science. The reality was I went to Stanford, I struggled on the basic computer science course, and I was like, guys, I'm switching, right? So that's really it, right? And I'm not doing anything related to computer science today, right? So I think that's really sort of the point that I want to drive across, which is figure out how you can build exceptionalism. And often it's not about being super talented in one area, right? But it's about being able to commit to one thing longer than others. Because just when other people are like, okay, 6 months, I'm done, right? Going off on my holiday, I just ask one question, can I continue on? And that really just helped me to compound that advantage. That's one. The second part, coming back to Joash's question, it really comes down to relationships. In fundraising in general, we have this a bit of a joke, but I think there's also a grain of truth to it, which is you ask for money, you get advice, you ask for advice, you get money, right? So maybe let me explain this, and also this was a lived experience. Often when you ask people directly for money, they will give you a lot of well-meaning advice, but often that would mean that they're not investing in you, right? Now, what worked for us really well is actually not asking for money the first time you meet someone, right? I mean, most of you are foreign to me today. Imagine I come to you and say, hey, would you invest in my business? I mean, you guys will be like, I don't know you, right? Like, who knows what you're going to do with the money after this? Now, what worked for us, on the other hand, was building relationships with people even before we needed the capital, right? These were people who trusted us, who saw us, and we regularly updated them, right? It's so underestimated, but if you have a mentor in your life, whether in school, outside of school, update them regularly, right? If they are taking the time and effort to invest in you, the least you could do is to reciprocate and just let them know how you are doing, right? And so what we did is we did these investor updates that we sent to many, many people, right? We had this mailing list, and we always told them, here's what we did, what we achieved, but also here are some of the challenges, right? And here's how you can help. Well, not everyone responds to that, obviously, right? Some people read it, some people don't read it, but for those who responded to it, to say, hey, you should talk to this person, it actually became a great source for us to find our early investors, right? Because these were people who, by the time when we were fundraising, they already knew our journey, right? They already knew what we had achieved, but more importantly, they knew the barriers and the challenges we had overcome, right? And we brought them along the journey together with us, right? Because they gave advice, we acted on it. So I would say really think about how you can build relationships, and it's not necessarily like networking, right? It's about people who are already investing in you, people who are already supporting you. Can you just do the basic courtesy of regularly updating them? It will work wonders.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us here are students in our journey of applying for college, right? So we talked about Stanford. We talked about the flexibility of the US versus UK. US gives you that flexibility to choose your major a little bit later on. But specifically, there's so many colleges in the US. There's the East Coast, there's the West Coast. Other than the name, the brand, of course, like why Stanford?
Well, I mean, for me, it felt like Stanford was with the heart of Silicon Valley, right? Where sort of all this innovation and entrepreneurship was at. So I wanted to be part of it. Also, I think at the end of the day, they accepted me, so I went for the early application, right? So I was like, okay, if you take me in, I'll take you, right? So it was more of a function of that. Really, I think at the end of the day, when you think about the top tier universities, not just in US but globally, after a while, it doesn't really matter, right? Just now, I know Tak showed that ranking list, but do employers really care that Stanford is below Harvard? It doesn't really matter, right? Like you're sort of in that category, and I think that's, if possible, aim for that. But otherwise, there's also many good options, right? But I guess the point is to not obsess about ranking tables. It's about being clear about what you want, right? And for me, being close to entrepreneurship was what I wanted, which was why Stanford felt like the natural choice.
Yeah, I think those are some very good insights for our students. Yeah, I think fit is also a very important thing for students looking to study at colleges. It depends if you're interested in entrepreneurship, if you're interested in finance. Different areas in the US might be better for you. And I also wanted to share like a quick experiment that I did when I visited Stanford campus actually. So one of the things I really like about Stanford is the culture of collaboration and community that oftentimes isn't as prevalent in Singapore universities. So what I did was, I went to the Stanford campus. I just met random students. I didn't know these students. And I asked them, why Stanford? I asked them the same question I asked Sinan today. Why Stanford? How was your experience like? What classes are you taking? And I asked 3 students. Of all the 3 students I asked, all of them stopped and they actually spent 15 minutes of their time sharing with me, a random stranger who was just visiting, how their experience was like there. And when I saw that, I was like, yeah, there's really a culture of innovation, and that's the reason it's so different, and you get that whole startup ecosystem there. So we're running a little bit short on time. I know we have some questions from the audience, so we're going to move to the Q&A segment, and we will start that now. So the first question from our audience is, what did you do to create the right profile in junior college for your scholarship? Or what sort of advice, would you have for students who are thinking of going down that route?
Yeah, so like I shared in secondary 3, I had a research attachment, right? I think the one thing I would advise everyone, it's really to think about what is one thing that you can commit to for the long time, for the long period, right? And when I mean long, it definitely means more than 1 year. I think what we see often in college admissions sort of processes and all, it's people who try a bunch of many things, but don't really have the commitment to any one thing, right? So as a result, you don't really have depth of experience, you don't really have rich stories to tell. So I would say, when you think about building a profile, it's not just about doing extracurriculars for the sake of doing it and doing 20 of them, right? Think about what's 1 or 2 that you are prepared to invest time, effort, sweat, to really make it work, and because that comes through very easily, right? In your, whether or not you have substance, 有没有料, right? In Mandarin, that's what they say. It's very obvious immediately. So think about how you can build that substance in your profile, and what's something you can do over a expanded duration of time.
You know, yeah, those are some good insights. So you mentioned education can be a foot in the door.
Yep.
Given your experiences, your wealth of experiences from building to now an investor, what are three top things you think companies are looking for apart from education or a college degree as a proxy, you know, when they hire talents? What are those three?
Well, three. I think I'll sort of boil it down to something a lot simpler, right? And this is something that we look for all the time when we hire interns for our fund, which Joash many years ago joined us and was one of our best interns, still is one of our best interns.
Thank you for saying that.
It's really hunger and willingness to learn, right? Look, I think the reality of it is today employers out there, companies out there are realistic, right? You guys are fresh. Right? We all were fresh once, and there's not a lot of expectation of real skills that you bring because that's something we are supposed to teach you when you join us. But I think that humbleness and willingness to learn, that hunger, that's something that we look up for all the time, and that's something that no one can teach, right? It's either there or it's not. And let me make it even a bit more real for you, right? Don't say no to doing the dirty work or sometimes the boring, the mundane stuff. Right? I think there's sometimes a bit of entitlement that you want to come in, and I understand, right? You want to create value from day one, show the world what we have. You have to earn the right to get there, right? And sometimes earning the right to get there is by doing the menial, granular stuff, right? Let me give you a very clear example. I got into Boston Consulting Group, which is one of the more competitive and harder to get sort of consulting firms, right? You go through this whole case process. There's many sort of tips, advice out there. I made it in. The first week I was in, I was cleaning up Excel spreadsheets, right? So like, this Stanford grad that comes out of there working for the top tier one, you're cleaning up Excel sheets, but that's the price you pay, right? So don't be afraid to pay the price of doing the menial, the boring stuff, because once again, that's how you earn the right to do the greater things, right? When your boss, when your people who you work with trust you, then you can start to move up and do more things. So hunger, motivation, and don't be afraid to do the dirty work.
Yeah, I think you're very right to say that. A lot of these tasks might seem menial, boring, monotonous, but you really do learn a lot from all of these activities. Last one, we have about 30 seconds left.
Okay.
What are some skills that every student should have, maybe in a sentence or two?
Be relentless and be resourceful. What does that mean? Relentless means it's always going to be difficult. If anything's worth doing, it is going to be difficult, right? The question is, are you just going to give up because, too difficult, I'm not going to do it? So be relentless and be resourceful, because you always won't have enough time, money, skills, people, whatever, right? The idea is, can you find the necessary resources and always think of creative ways to bring what's needed to solve what you are trying to do.
Right on time.
Yep.
Looi Tin, Saison Capital. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Please welcome Charlotte Chua and Koyui, ex-Sedifly students now at top US universities, for a conversation with Sedifly's talk.
How about we move a little bit here?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry. All right. I really love the order of the talks today because we started with a theory, right? You get into universities. What do you need to do to get into universities? And then just now we heard the stories, like sort of from the other end of the journey, already made it, right, through universities into a very successful careers. But now let's hear about the people or the students who have just gone through the process, right? The admission, US admission, right? So today I have the honor of having the two students, ex-Sedifly students, who made it to the top US universities, Koyue and Charlotte. So maybe we start with some introduction. Maybe we start with you first, Charlotte.
Thank you so much for having me today. So I'm Charlotte, and I actually went through a very unconventional path before I ended up at New York University, where I'll be going this fall. I completed my IGCSEs in Singapore, and I later went to Australia, Melbourne, to complete a foundation degree. I was sold that foundation degree was almost direct pathway into the University of Melbourne after. And I thought it was such a great choice. You know, you get to skip 1 year, graduate early. But I soon realized that when I was there, the Australian culture didn't really suit what I need. It was very efficiency oriented, while I wanted something more collaborative. You know, I think when we go to the workforce in the future, you will have to work with a lot of people, and teamwork is something very important. And that's what I think that the US does very well. So I left the University of Melbourne last June. I took a gap year. I had to take my international A-levels because my foundation degree was not recognized. And I did that in 3 months. Then I later, and where I am currently at, I'm interning for a private equity firm. I'm interested in finance, and I think that was a good way to gain exposure. So during this internship, I applied for university, where I worked with Sedifly. It was tough, but I'll be heading to NYU this fall studying economics and maths.
So that's a lot of twist and turn. Then I think let's hear from Ke, which I think takes a little bit more traditional route to applying to the US. How about you, Ke? What was your journey like?
So hi everyone, I'm Ke, and I did the integrated program at River Valley High School. So I was there for 6 years, and I took my A-levels. I took a really niche combination that I think many of you here would probably have never heard of. I took China Studies in Chinese, yes, it's a subject, translation, math and econs, and after my A-levels, I knew that I wanted to apply to the US for university, but I was unsuccessful in my first cycle of applications. So after that, I matriculated in NUS, and there, during my first semester, I decided to reapply to the US universities that I had been interested in with the help of Sedifly. And now I'll be matriculating in the University of Chicago this fall. Yep.
Okay, so I think both of you pretty much has a set goal and clear motivation why you wanted to study in the US, right? But again, like at the moment that now you have to craft the application, right? So to put everything that you have been doing together, would you be able to share with me some of the challenges or the uncertainty you faced back then? Maybe we start with Ke.
Sure. So actually I think looking back, my greatest challenge was actually self-doubt. Because when I looked at my own profile and then compared it with a lot of the success stories of people who had gotten into top US universities, I just felt like I sort of paled in comparison. Because you hear all these stories about how people get in these schools by being national athletes, by being child actors in MediaCorp or even in Hollywood or things like that. And then when you look at your own application, you might be prone to feeling that, hey, am I really, say, U Chicago material? Am I really Stanford material? Things like that. But I think working with my mentor at Sedifly, I realized after listing all of the activities that I had done, that actually I had a very compelling narrative, studying things like China Studies, bringing in that sort of perspective was actually very valuable and something that I had not considered before. So my advice to anyone out here with the same self-doubt that I was facing is that don't write yourself off too quickly. Look at what you have, and anyone can create a very unique and compelling story.
So it was never about fitting into a mold, right? Of course, molds are there, and some people want to fit in. Yeah. But through the journey that you apply for the top US, you realize that even the materials or the profiles, the stories that you have, if you really look at it, the different perspectives, you can actually come up with a very compelling one as well. That's a very good takeaway. What about you, Charlotte? Any challenges that you faced back then?
Yeah, so I think self-doubt is definitely one of it. When I was applying for university, someone told me, oh, I heard of this student that got into Harvard, and their story was, I saw a paper plane fly over me, and then I know I wanted to study medicine at Harvard. You know, what kind of story is this? And I know I definitely don't have something like that. So I feel like besides that, I'm not applying as a first year. Usually first years, I feel they need to have a more holistic essay. I applied as a transfer, and what schools are looking at from transfer students, I feel, is a more career focus, an essay with a direction. What do you want to do at university? How is my university, or how is the university you're going to attend help you in the future? So because I went from a very unconventional background, and most universities in the US usually require students to complete 1 year at a previous university before applying, I was very afraid that my 1 semester at University of Melbourne was going to jeopardize my whole application. But I feel like by working with the mentors at Sedifly and really truly reflecting on why you want to do it, how is the university going to help you, and it gave me a sense of reassurance and to help me craft an essay that can tell my story, to show the schools that I belong here. This is what I need to help me grow in the future. Yeah.
So I think clarity, right? That's the key word. For Charlotte, it was clarity on what she wants to do with a degree. For Ke, it was clarity on who she is, right? Why? Okay, she wants to get into the university, but why who she is actually, aligned with what the university is looking for. Yeah, that's great. That's great insight. So we have the problem, right, with not having the clarity during the application time. How did you, Charlotte, you and your mentor, how did you resolve it? What was the conversation? Maybe you can share some of the conversation you had with your mentor to actually fix this problem.
So with US universities in particular, I feel that they place more focus on your personal statements, whereas in the UK, we've heard from Tak earlier that it's more academic focused. So with the personal statements, you really have to understand why, how is the university going to help you, and understand yourself. Is this what you truly want? You can't apply to a university and be truly authentic when it's not what you want. If it's your parents or somebody that's telling you to apply to the university, the admission officers are going to see that, through your essays. So by working with the mentors at Sedifly, they helped me to get a clearer narrative, be more clear on the reasons why I want to go to this university in particular. So actually, one thing that I learned through this experience at Sedifly is when you're writing your essays, it's really to convey the language of the university you're applying to. It sounds weird, but it's like, can you speak the language of the university? If a university uses a particular term in their website, are you able to pick up on that? It's really, do you understand the branding of the school and if that culture fit aligns with yours? So I think Sedifly helped me see that more clear, yeah.
I think because now we're talking to US students, right? I realized that concept, like speaking the language in university, is also applicable to my case when I applied to Cambridge, right? So they're looking for a scholar, someone who's totally committed to the major. Back then it was physics, astrophysics for me. I was talking to a lot of senior friends who apparently already got into the physics degree, natural science in Cambridge, and that's how I learned the language that they speak. Well, it's not the verbal language in that way, but the kind of expectation, like the students that are looking for. I think you learn a lot from speaking to either the alumni or the senior friends, right, who I've already got in. Yeah. And you, Ke, the clarity, right, on who you are, what you truly want. How do you resolve that, self-doubt?
I think for me, it was a lot of because up until that point in time, I had never really sat down to reflect on all of the various activities that I have done before. So it was that point where I really took out a piece of paper, a Google Doc, that kind of thing, wrote down all of the different experiences that I've had in my life, reflected on all the different kinds of emotions that I'd gone through those experiences, that I realized that I had actually gone through a very transformative journey as someone who had initially been quite introverted and afraid to speak out, to someone who was taking on leadership positions in different organizations in school and outside of school. So I think that one thing I particularly love about US colleges is they really care about who you are as a person. So not just like your academic interests, but you as a holistic being. So I think really take the time to like look through everything that you've done so far, reflect on why you're doing these things and what you want out of higher education and a career. So having that like that space to kind of think about all of these things made me a bit clearer about my identity and what I wanted out of my own college experience.
Yeah, so I think both of you have resolved that conflict within yourself, right? Or this is what the expectation of the, I don't know, supposedly the world or universities that you want to go into, and what I truly want, right? And then eventually finding the university or the courses that actually reflect what I truly want, right? My degrees or my careers afterward. Yeah. Transformative journey. I think I went through that same transformative journey. I can't emphasize this to like my current, my past, or even my future students more. I think I learned a lot, but I want to hear from the two of you as well. Like, so if there may be one or two things that you think you can share with the future students who might be applying, not just to the US colleges, right? Even UK as well. What are the two things that you learn from this journey that you think you probably will be carrying into your college journey and the rest of your life too?
I think for me it will be have fun with the process, and also it's not over till it's over. So I'll share the first one, which is have fun with the process. I think like right now, like every one of you here who is thinking about applying overseas, like you're also going through the education system at the same time. It's probably a very stressful time, and you might be pegging a lot of your self-worth to the admission outcomes that you will get in future. But the truth is that actually this process is really helpful in you discovering yourself as a person, as well as discovering what you don't want. Because I think that up until this point of your life, like if you are a high school student, most of your decisions have probably been made for you by your parents or people around you. This is the first time in your life where you are asking yourself what you want, and like not just what you want out of a college experience, but what you kind of want to do in your career and in your life. So embrace that process. It will be messy and a bit confusing, but it's very worth it when you come out the other end having known yourself a little better. And the final thing would be, it's not over till it's over. So initially, I actually did early decision to Barnard College at Columbia University, but I was rejected. And like, at the time I was quite devastated because I had put a lot of effort into my application. But then as I started working on doubling down on my application for my second choice, which was the University of Chicago, I realized that actually that school fit me a lot better. Like I really enjoyed the application process for that school because they had such quirky and interesting questions. And the intellectual culture at the University of Chicago was truly what I was looking for. So don't give up in the process, even if you face rejection the first time. And as cliche as it sounds, rejection truly is redirection.
Every time I hear the story from Ke, right, the quirky essays, right, I kept thinking about my time, like being interviewed by the Cambridge supervisors. I applied to King's College back then. It got as quirky as it got. Like they just want to know, oh, you are interested in physics, you're interested in astrophysics. Why? What? Tell me more, right? But that's just the character, right, of the college or university applied to, which you truly want to understand even before you apply. Okay, then Charlotte,
I think 2 or 3 things to add.
Yeah.
So firstly, it's never too late to start. I actually only engaged Sedifly 3 months before my applications were due. Some people might say it's too late, but I feel like you have to want this to be able to do it well. If you really want to go to a US college, not your parents ask you to go, you want it, you will put in the effort to do the right extracurriculars or to craft a narrative that actually shows your authentic self. And then the second thing is to be reflective, and to be intentional. You have to really think, is this, as in like, it applies to the first point, but if it's what you want, can you do the things that kind of complement your profile? And just to end off, I want to say that I know this whole seminar today has touched on a lot of AI, but with applications, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI you use doesn't know you. Only you know yourself the best. Your application can be as authentic as you write it, not as how ChatGPT writes it. You can bounce off ideas using AI, but at the end of the day, your experiences and the reasons of why you want what you want can only truly come from you.
Yeah. That last point, I think we have to bring it into a separate conversation that I really want to dig into. But yeah, I think authenticity, clarity, resilience, right? Those are the three things that we carry into US or UK college application. Yeah. Thanks a lot, the two of you, Kerye and Charlotte. So later, right, we'll be stationed at the counter behind. So we'll be there in the Meet the Strategy session to answer any questions that you have. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. We'll now be taking a quick 10-minute break. For those who want refreshment, please head over to the other side of the foyer where we have tea, drinks, and some snacks. Those who have the readiness form filled out, please drop it at the registration counter. It's located between this wing, the left wing, and the right wing. We'll see you back soon.
My top advice for startup founders who are hoping to scale is to do a lot more research in their journey for the next 7 to 10 years and be very truthful to themselves what they are able to achieve.
We need to play a role in working together and collaborating with the ecosystem for the greater good of the startup and investor community.
Please welcome Jeffrey Payne of Golden Gate Ventures, Alan Chung of Insignia Venture Partners, and Mohan Binani of E27 for a conversation with Sedifly's Joash Lee.
You can sit in the audience, so I think I'm super glad to be joined by three venture capital powerhouses that need no introduction. Jeffrey, Alan, and Mohan, thank you for joining us today. Now, a quick rundown for our audience, for those of you not in the venture capital space and not as familiar with building. Jeffrey is the founding partner of Golden Gate Ventures, one of the region's most established early-stage venture capital firms with over US $300 million in assets under management and investments in close to 100 companies since 2011. Alan is the vice president at Insignia Venture Partners, a $1 billion fund based in Singapore but operating regionally. Mohan is the co-founder and CEO of E27, Southeast Asia's largest startup media and ecosystem platform, and the organizer of Echelon, which some of you might be familiar with. We, in fact, had a booth at Echelon just a couple of days ago. Now, Mohan is also very uniquely positioned as both a founder and an investor at Orwell Ventures, an early-stage VC firm that has backed over 30 early-stage startups and funds across APAC. So I'm very glad to be joined by this really amazing panel today. Let's start off with the very big picture. So the funding environment has been tough for the past couple of years, and we're also seeing AI disrupt many industries. Disrupt can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. Many opportunities have been created from this, and from your vantage points, what are the most important macro or sectoral trends that ambitious students and young founders should be paying attention to for those who are in the entrepreneurial ecosystem or like to build projects? Maybe we can start off with you, Mohan.
Okay, hi. Firstly, it's a real pleasure to be here. So thanks for having me. We are living in very unique times, and I think there are a few reasons why. Firstly, is the democratization or the access to building has gotten so much easier now that there's really no excuse to solve a problem that you are particularly passionate about, right? What used to cost time, a lot of money, and very specific talent is now no longer an issue, right? So I think that's one very big opportunity that the younger populace should be tapping on and really taking advantage of, right? Now, the beauty of that is that it allows you to scale your impact without putting in a lot more resources. The negative aspect to that, of course, is that that also means that everybody who's trying to solve a similar problem is going to be approaching the same lack of capital and democratization of code that you will have. So that means, right, that the competitive edge you need to have with respect to solving your problems needs to be very, very meaningful. It's a bit similar to what Chingan was mentioning earlier, right, that you need to have a depth of understanding of the problem that you're building. You need to have a lot longer and larger tenacity and time horizon if you want to like stick it out to the issue. So that kind of also makes company building complicated in a very, very different way that I think a lot of the young founders, right, might not realize that, hey, time or putting in the long-term effort is quite key. The third thing really is that globally, from a attention level and AI level, the region that we are in right now might not be the most interesting or most favorable to be in, especially if you are building an AI company or you are younger, right? So some of the top AI founders are shifting their attention and moving to the US. A lot of capital as well, from family offices, from investors in this part of the world, have shifted their attention and focus to the US. So if you are building here and you don't have the means to go to the US or larger markets, even like the UK, right, your challenge to stand out and raise capital can be a bit harder than what it traditionally was. So I think these are I just give it the broad opportunity side, but also the unique new challenges side, and I let the other panelists contribute.
I think you're very right to point out the differences in the innovation ecosystem in Singapore and the US. You know, that's where a lot of college students are there. It's just that culture of collaboration and innovation that's very prominent in the US, right? I mean, Ellen, you look like you have something to say. I know you have backed many big deals like Carol, GoTo, J&T Express. You're one of Southeast Asia's most active and well-capitalized early-stage funds. So maybe you want to shed a little bit of light and insight on that.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for having me here today, and very delighted to share about my experiences, and hopefully it's helpful to everyone here considering their next steps in this very important juncture of your life. Just want to touch on what Mohan said, right? And you know, I read somewhere and I heard somewhere that they used to say that if you want to start a company and you're a non-technical founder, first in the past you would create a pitch deck, you find a technical founder, and then you build something and raise capital. Now you use Claude Code, you start a beta product, you post it on GitHub, you attract a technical founder, and then you raise money from there. So I guess engineering is no longer the constraint. Essentially, what we find is that because engineering is no longer a constraint, what's important is understanding what users want. As what Mohan mentioned, solving the problems that users have, and it's about what separates any company from the sea of competitors out there. Is really about the product that you build and how intimately you understand your company, your users. I think, speaking a bit about the funding environment here, yes, I think funding environment has taken a change from the past 3 or 4 years ago. But in the end of the day, I think, capital still finds good companies. If you have a company that, you are using AI in the right way, you are providing real value, and that shows in terms of user engagement, that shows in terms of productivity or efficiency of the users, and that separates you out from the crowd, capital will still find you. And then it's about how you find different markets, right? You have companies and investors moving to the US, big market, very fast adoption, but also, very steep, like red ocean, steep kind of competition, right? So, we have companies who have then thought about, what are the other tier 1 Asia Pacific markets that are geographically a bit closer to us that we can target, right? So I think you mentioned one of the companies you invested in, Caro, right? They started in Singapore. Today they are in Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, They just expanded to Hong Kong, Japan. And so these are also tier 1 markets where you have big problems, big used car in terms of a total addressable market, right? So I think that you can actually look abroad and see what are different areas and different markets that you can target, right? Not just the US per se.
Jeffrey, so Golden Gate has backed some really big winners. You're also an investor in Caro, Ninja Van, Carousel. Some of these founders started their startups while still in college. And VCs like to make oftentimes what's known as a founder bet, but that's often investing in founders who have established track records, serial entrepreneurs. What do you look out for when you invest in a student entrepreneur who's building something? How does that play a part in your decision? There are students who are still in college, they might have other commitments, they don't have as many years of experience, but when you back a student founder, what are some things that come to your mind?
So, wait, can you hear me? Good. Okay, so before I answer the question, so I'll just introduce myself and then thank you for inviting me. At conferences, I tend to be the weirder person, yeah. So just FYI for the kids, just hang on. So I invest now. In the last 2 years, I invest mostly in the US. So I wanted to kind of give you guys content so that it actually helps you. So for the students or parents or counselors in the room, I see a lot of founders, right? And I already pattern match for the last probably 4 or 5 years. So outside of this event, right, if you guys want to talk to me or whatnot, right, tips and tricks for parents, I have some. Students also have. These guys also have, right? I think generally we all have. So you can, okay, so not just here, so you can reach out to me whenever you want to. Now, for your question, for an institutional fund to invest, you have to basically drop out, right? Now, as a Singaporean, you're like, huh? Right? Yeah. But in the US, it's very common, right? So in a typical, so if you guys know Y Combinator, the #1 accelerator in the world, 15% of the cohort of 150 companies are dropouts, right? So I've ever seen a high school dropout, right? But most dropouts are usually from the top schools, right? Most of them are MIT or Stanford, but generally, for some reason, a lot of MIT dropouts. So if you want to raise money, sorry, you have to drop out, right? You have to devote, right? You can't do 3 things at one time, right? So, but other than that, just like Mohan said, you need to understand the problem really well. As a student, chances are you only build things for yourself, right? Build stuff for school, build stuff for homework or note-taking or whatnot, right? Because this is what you know. And that's perfectly okay too, right? So as long as you understand the problem really, really well, that's okay. Now, what I've seen student entrepreneurs who build things that are completely like, huh? And then I ask further, and then they'll tell me, oh yeah, because my dad is a pharmacist, so I built a software for pharmacy chains, right? And I've been kind of like working there since I was 10, which is technically not legal, but they've been in and out of pharmacy chains for a long time, so they kind of understand the pain the parents are going through. So it doesn't matter, as long as you know the problem, then you want to do it. Now, if you want to raise money, yeah, then you probably have to drop out. But if you don't want to raise money, then don't worry. Just carry on.
You talked a little bit about dropping out, and you also talked a little bit about MIT. A lot of students drop out from there, right? Why do you think it is that a lot of founders who are backed by venture capital firms come from these select few groups of schools? Is it more that it's the students who go there and they are already ambitious and driven to begin with, or is it the network and ecosystem and matching with peers that gives them that ecosystem to really thrive? And how do you think, what do you think is the value of college in the first few years, at least before they drop out, if they do drop out?
Okay, so I'm not helping them sell, and not helping them sell also, but I tell you what I see, okay? So I invest primarily in AI for the last 10 years, but in the last 3 years, it's like literally crazy on AI. Now, the ones that are being funded now, they are doing things that nobody can do. Plot or no plot, still cannot. Okay? So that's the first thing you need to remember. If you guys are going to do STEM, you have to try to get to the 5 schools I will mention. You probably already know, right? So MIT, not #1, but I think Stanford's #1, MIT second, Berkeley, CMU, and Harvard. 5. STEM, right? Any engineering, any CS, any double E CS, any applied math, any physics type, these are the 5. Right? Because I normally see these 5 schools in all the AI founders that I meet that are doing fairly well. Why? Now, I've also do, because I guest lecture at Stanford, so sometimes I do ask the students, why do you come here, right? Which is a normal question. I think you did that same thing. And what I found is a few things. A few of these schools, Berkeley and Stanford, are about the same, but it's quite different. The people are just highly, highly driven, right? Just like many of you here, right? Highly driven. But you have never seen the really, really highly driven, the IMO gold medalists for multiple years kind of people. The geniuses that graduate at 19, you have never seen this. In Singapore, you don't hardly ever see them, correct? But in the US, there's a lot, because they come from all over the world. So you see them like all in one place. So that kind of scares me sometimes. I'm like, oh, okay, the whole world kind of aggregate that. So there's like a pyramid, right? So the best of the best goes to certain schools. Now the difference between Stanford and MIT is Stanford is in a bubble, right? So you don't rival with Harvard and, so it's in a bubble and everything around you is just startups, right? Everybody that guest speaks are alumni and they are worth I don't know how much. So there is this brainwashing thing. So many of the students tell me, by the 3rd semester, your brain washed already. Okay, so let me repeat again. Even the MBA students, 25% try to drop out on the 2nd year because their brain washed already. Right? So everybody wants to start companies. And it only happens in Stanford for some reason, but I kind of know so basically, it is about the people you surround yourself with. That's it, right? That's it. So there's nothing I can explain further. Now, if you are from those schools, I think many of the guys here are, you can ask them, like the Cambridge people, you can ask them, how are your classmates like? Just ask them, they'll tell you. They're completely, like, they're on another world, kind. Right? Yeah. And sometimes you don't understand what that means, so you have to go. Like I think Mohan, you at NOC, you would have seen the cream of the crop of the Stanford kids, right? And various alumni of different degrees. Yeah.
I think you're very right. It's the level of talent and ambition, and it's competing not just on a regional stage, but now it's the global stage. And a lot of these great talents are there because they meet their peers, their co-founders, the ecosystem that these communities and these schools are really building. Now I want to open a question to the floor, whoever wants to take a shot at answering this. There are a number of different accelerator programs you pointed out, like there's Y Combinator, there's Entler, there's Plug and Play and so on. Plug and Play is actually our community partner. On one hand, these different accelerators give students the resources and the network they need to get started. But oftentimes, or sometimes at least, it means that the founders who are actually joining these programs may not have an idea yet, and they're jumping to solve a problem they may not deeply understand better than anyone else. And I think that's something that is super important. So obviously, there's the pro, which is that these accelerator programs give students the resources, the network they need to thrive and kickstart their projects. But it might also mean that they want to build and they say they want to build, but they don't know what exactly they want to build. So what are your thoughts on these different accelerator programs? Is it something that you would encourage students who are interested in building to go for? Or is it something you would say, try to build it yourself, see a real problem, and then once you get an idea, then go for the program? I don't know if this is a tricky question, if anyone wants to go.
I take a step first, okay? I think in the company building journey, every process needs to have a purpose, okay? YC, we use YC as an example. When I refer to YC, Entler and all the other programs have a very similar purpose. Don't just go for it or apply for it for the prestige. Like, I think maybe to some extent as Singaporeans also sometimes, we like to collect stamps because it gives us validation. It makes us feel like what I'm building or working on feels legit. And I have also personally fallen in that trap before, right? As a young student in the early days, right? But if you don't have real clarity on why you are applying for the program and what can the program do to help you, then you are actually most likely going to not make the best use of that 2 or 3 months that you are in the program. So for YC, I mean, a lot of people apply to YC on a deep level because of the intense amount of quality time they get to spend with Paul and the gang, plus their network. That's the most meaningful thing, though. Like, I know many YC founders are. YC doesn't actually teach you, doesn't really teach you the skill sets. It provides you an environment where you are questioned on a weekly basis and kept accountable, which can be very, very helpful if you are early. Plus, you have a network of people, right, that you're meeting on a regular basis, and it's like a race. Everybody is fighting to get there, and so that intense pressure in that short period of time can be super helpful if you're early. And a lot of YC entrants don't end up doing what they're doing because they realize also very quickly through the feedback network and the feedback loop that what they're building might not be very meaningful. They could pivot, they could drop completely, or they could just, just maybe not even pursue the entrepreneurship path. Right? So that one is very key. Right? In Singapore, at least, previously, maybe not so much now, a lot of people join Antler to get a taste of entrepreneurship, which I would not say is the most correct thing to do, but it is what it is. So question that need for applying for any program in the first place. NOC also, for the program that I'm in, half the batch will apply because they want to get exposure to entrepreneurship. The other half will apply because they want the NOC stamp on their resume that then allows them to get into a nice bank or a nice environment. Both equally meaningful and purposeful in their own rights, no right or wrong here. So be very, very clear what the purpose is before you go for these programs.
Yeah, so I think it's a lot about the community, and as you mentioned, good founders, they iterate and they pivot. And I don't know what's the exact statistic, but probably something like 90% of founders start off with an idea, they find out it's not the real problem, and then they pivot to something else, right? I don't know, Alan and Jeffrey, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think, of course, besides choosing which accelerator you go to, and of course, going to the one and being very clear on what you want to get out of it, I think actually one particular aspect that actually levels the playing field a lot for student entrepreneurs is in the sense that with the skills that we look at in them, right? And think in terms of being a founder, it's very important to be a self-initiated learner. And it really boils down to what you mentioned earlier, right? Where, you are going to get a lot of times where you have an idea that's close to you. You're going to have a hypothesis, you're going to try it out, and you're going to fail, and then you're going to get a feedback loop, and you're going to have to try again. So yeah, it is not really where you start off at. It's actually the slope of the learning curve and how fast you can actually climb it. I think that's very important, no matter where you go, right? So before Insignia, I was actually at an accelerator firm in China called China Accelerator, and we used to do these things every Monday check-ins where we made the founders fill up what are little experiments, little tests that they have tried out for this week. What was the results? How did they prove their hypothesis right or prove it wrong? And what were they going to do next? And that is one very small, I guess, part of that self-initiated learning, right? That you really have to embark on as a founder. Because every time you might start off with an initial idea that is close to your heart, very quickly you don't find that it works. And then, we see that in a lot of founders where the idea that they are working, the company that they are running versus the idea that they initially worked on is very different. So I think that actually skill set is very important.
Yeah, the ability to iterate, the ability to pivot. And I think this is a very common theme that keeps resurfacing even during our earlier panel, with Tinan. And that is that having a good college degree or education, or even there are different accelerator programs, it isn't just the community that you get there, but it's also about having this stamp of approval to say that this big brand has trusted me, and it's something that establishes that credibility. So Mohan, you started E27 as a student initiative at NUS, and Jeffrey and Alan, you have seen many young founders raise money. Is raising VC capital really necessary for every ambitious founder today? Can it be a bootstrap business? Can it be something that's backed by private angels? And then on that note, when is the right time? When should student founders focus on really building, and Jeffrey, you mentioned dropping out, right? If they want to drop out, when should that happen, if ever?
If you go first, you go first.
No, me, okay. Actually, 99% of you shouldn't raise money from us. Okay, so that's the first thing. Most of you shouldn't raise money from us. If you are not worth 2.5 billion in 8 years, don't raise money from us. Okay, get it? Okay. So what does that mean? It means if on year 8 you're not hitting $100 million revenue, US dollars, forget raising money from us. That's the number one thing. Now you can raise money elsewhere. You can bootstrap, you can raise money from angels, you can try to break even fast and then just use revenue to grow. You can raise money from strategics because they want to partner with you. So that's number one. Now, when do you drop out? Usually it's when you're working 18 hours a day and then you're like, I cannot study anymore.
There's only so much you can do.
Or we have friends that, my credit card burst because my server just exploded because a million visits came, right? Then you're like, oh, something's happening. So maybe I should focus on that instead of school. Now, having said that, back to the previous question. If you are a Singaporean, dropping out is not a thing. Okay? Not a thing. Okay. Now, only drop out when you really, really, really want to try. So the fastest way is to apply the YC. You get in, you drop out. Understand? You don't get in, stay in school. Simple as that. Then before applying to accelerators, there is something called a startup school. YC has something called a startup school. It's like a weekend thing or one-day thing. Just go to that. Right? Then you have a feel of what it is like. Okay? So, and YC is very used to students dropping out, and their average age is probably like 27. Right? There's a bunch of 22-year-olds running around. So if you cannot get in, means you technically cannot make it already.
Some very good advice, tips, and tricks. And I think you also touched on a very good point, which is what's a good investment versus what's something that's VC backable. Because VCs look for something that not just is a good investment, but they look for things that can return the entire fund. Right? Mohan or Alan, do you have any thoughts on this?
So firstly, there's something about entrepreneurship that a lot of people don't realize. A lot of founders who also drop out and do all this, they can do this because they're rich. So they come from environments. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's father was apparently a dentist or a doctor or something like that, right? So they come from environments that allow them to live a kind of lifestyle whereby they can afford. So that's also very, very key, So founding a company sometimes is it's a privilege, unfortunately, accosted to a few people. And if you notice, they're all Ivy League because they all can afford to go to Ivy League schools. So that's a very, very big piece, So don't also drop out, start a company at your own financial peril, because that's going to make the process of starting up very, very painful. Then you end up having to raise capital for the sake of funding the business or yourself, right, which can be very detrimental, right? On the aspect of VC, and what Jeff rightfully pointed, right, 99% of you, probably 99.99% of you, shouldn't take VC money. The truth is there is a lot of other capital options, and that is actually also accosted to younger founders. Some of the startup SG grants, the government still gives out capital that are given to younger folks, but there are ways to get capital through revenue financing, through, even the Airbnb founders were well known for raising capital by selling cereals, right? Like, there are much more cheaper, smarter, better ways to raise capital. There are even organizations that offer grants if your company is building for problems in certain verticals. So like there's an organization called Raise in Singapore that even gives up to $500,000 grant-free capital, if your position or your problem has an impact element. So don't use VCs as that default path. But if you do go to the VC pathway, right, you have to realize that if you cannot significantly return back the investment to them, they will 100% say no. It is not because of what you're doing, it's really because of the function of the asset class. VCs are supposed to look for organizations that can 100x, 500x their return. And if they say no to you, right, it doesn't mean that building a business that can get to 10 million in revenue or cash flow positive or net profitable, is a bad idea. It is really not. There are a lot of very, very good companies in this region that specifically focus on that. I have the venture fund that I have specifically looks for that kind of companies. Unfortunately, we are fully deployed already, but the kind of companies we were looking for were good $50 million companies. And there are VCs, there are family offices, there are certain investors that also look at that kind of investments. So don't discount non-VC funding options.
Yeah, alternative sources of funding. I think a lot of young entrepreneurs see venture capital and these different accelerator programs as a flex, right? It's something that's very sexy, something that's great. And look, I'm in Y Combinator, it's so great. But you don't always have to raise VC money to build a very successful startup, as what you have mentioned. And in fact, alternative sources of funding could include grants. And we are in fact also a beneficiary of the Startup SG grant by Enterprise Singapore. I think there are these many different avenues that actually support founders in their 0 to 1 journey. Let's go for some quick fire round questions. If each of you could give one piece of advice to every student in this room today about their future, what would it be? And maybe try to keep this to 1 or 2 lines or 30 seconds. We'll start with who looks ready. They need time to think about it.
I'm introvert. I need a lot of time. I'll carry on.
I'll go first. I think if you compare and look at, you look at success stories, and a lot of founders will say that, somehow, somewhere along the way, I got lucky, right? But the truth is, in essence, sometimes you also make your own luck, right? If you don't start out or try something and follow your heart to build something, you won't even be ready to take advantage when the opportunity comes, right? So yeah, I think make your own luck.
Yeah.
Make your own luck. How about you, Mohan?
I would say do dedicate a good percentage of your time. Like it can be an 80-20 thing. Do dedicate that 20%, right, to explore areas that you typically would not look at. I think the Steve Jobs lesson of him taking calligraphy classes and how that was a foundation for good fonts in the Mac, right, is a very, very good example. I was very lucky to do things like mountaineering in NUS and a few other like Southeast Asia history and all that actually came in handy later on. So do sometimes try to look at the non-alternative or other options just for the sake of exploring and personal growth and learning.
Don't keep all of your eggs in one basket. Broaden your options. How about you, Jeffrey? What are your thoughts?
I think with the internet and everything, you guys should acquire as much knowledge as possible. Like anything that you want to figure out, try, test. Then you need to find whether it's content or actual humans, like mentors to ask questions, right? So then there are 2 things I would say. One, surround yourself with people that is smarter than you, or like you want to be like, right? That's hard, right? Because you don't know where you are and you don't know where they are. You don't know the various levels of these people. So that's the first thing. Second thing, when you're young, especially now, take a bit more risk, right? If your family can afford for you to go US, go lah. Don't like Singapore, my home. I miss mee pok ta, whatever. I guarantee you go US, no mee pok ta, 0 mee pok ta for you. Okay. But if you like mee pok ta, then you stay lah, right? But generally, just take a bit more risk. Yeah, that's all.
Sorry, can I add one quick?
Yes.
If wherever you're traveling to, even in Singapore, right, if you can, right, look for conferences and big events, right, and go and volunteer. That was the biggest hack for me when I was in Silicon Valley. I used to volunteer for every event. If you can volunteer for registration, even better, because that's how you meet all the big shots, and people will remember you and know you. It's a really good hack to expand your network really quickly.
I fully resonate with that. For context, the earlier panel, I was an intern at Saison Capital a few years ago, and I joined at a very interesting time. It was when Web3 was, at its peak. And what I did was, I think there was Asia Crypto Week, Token 2049. I went to 20, 30 different events, and it was just about meeting people and building a network. And one very useful tip for students is, don't be so pragmatic about the network you build. You might meet people, they might not be able to help you now, but if you build that relationship over the long run, then that is something that, it could come back to help you. And even if not, they could be a very good friend of yours. The final question, what is one skill or experience you believe every ambitious student should actively build or learn right now? Whether or not they want to become a founder, if they want to work in tech or finance or whatever else they might want to do. I think we touched a little bit on vibe coding, but what is one skill that everyone should have?
Sales. You have to learn how to sell. Believe it or not, right, I used to be the kind of guy that if I went to an event, I will sit in the corner and have a coffee and just not talk to anybody. I only learned that in NOC, right, the ability to talk to people and sell. And sales doesn't mean I sell you something to buy, right? It could be everything from hiring to selling your idea, to just, even selling the reason why somebody should have coffee with you and that 1 hour to pick their brain really means something. So if there's one thing you should learn from the start as soon as you can, sales.
How about you, Alan? What are your thoughts on one skill that every ambitious student should actively build right now? Skill or experience?
Yeah, no, I already agree with Mohan, right? In essence, today a lot of the playing field is leveled, right? Because of AI, because of what you can ship really fast. But being able to articulate the vision, being able to convince your co-founders to join you, being able to convince a key employee to reject that lucrative offer from some of the big tech companies to join you. That is also actually really critical, right? And that also boils down to articulating the vision towards getting your first customer to believe in you when you have nothing, right? And then as you go along the way, right, you learn across the process, right? And back to what I said earlier on, self-initiated learning and making your own luck along the way, right? So I think that these are the few things.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a really great product, the best product of whatever you're building in the world, but if no one buys it, it's still not going to be a success. And I think, as you mentioned, it's a lot about the interpersonal skills, leadership, resilience, these different things that you can't just learn from a video or in a classroom, but it's really, being immersed in a community, an environment where you meet different peers. How about you, Jeffrey? Do you have any thoughts on a skill that every
I
student...
got a lot, but you can relax. You want to ask me? Can. So I'll give you a few. One, for the younger kids, learn debate. Okay, I tell you why. The Cambridge guys will tell you, when you're interviewing Cambridge people, if you are a debater, you will win. Okay, most Singaporeans don't like to do debate because we are all, we don't like confrontation, right? So if you're a very good debater, you will win the interviews, sort of the interview stage, right? Now, interviews are very important at the Oxford site and obviously in the US, so it helps you. So that's one. Two, please do more cold emails and cold LinkedIn messages. I don't see any of you do any of that. Why? Just do it. Okay? All my interns are all cold email. In fact, all my employees are cold email.
In fact, I cold email.
Yeah, see? Yeah. Don't worry. Asian, not Asian, shy, not shy, young, not old, doesn't matter. Just whack. Can whack, you whack. Okay?
You'll be very surprised.
Forget the Asian thing and, they might not like me. No. Just thick skin a bit. Just whack, okay? The fact is, I don't even get any. That's already quite scary already. You guys should at least send me some, right? Because most of my cold emails are from INSEAD students that are not even Singaporeans. Like, come on, you can do better than that, right? Okay, lastly, this is more important. This one, build an app, web or mobile alone for yourself to use and ship it, right? Give yourself a budget and a timeline and ship it. No excuse now, A year ago, there's a bit of excuses. Now, no excuse. So find a problem that you want to fix, right? And then just build it, right? I built countless of things. So there's no excuse. The younger you are, just try. You're probably going to build a game, which my son did, right? And his idea was like, I was like, shit, I probably will fund that idea. So sometimes the idea is actually quite interesting, right? Not all the time, but generally it's quite interesting. So if you can ship something, you ship something. because that gives you an idea how a founder actually feels like. Okay? There's a VC that we know, Chris Dixon, many years ago, he said something, it's still the same. I think many of you will understand. There are two kinds of people in the world, founders and everybody else. Okay? So you just need to understand how the founders feels like, then you may have an idea whether you want to do it or not.
You'll be surprised at the number of people actually willing to help you. Unfortunately, we are now out of time. Thank you, Jeffrey, Ellen, and Mohan for joining us today, and thank you all. We have a very exciting panel keynote interview coming up next, and let's get ready for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. For our next segment, please welcome onto the stage our guest of honor, Mr. Alvin Tan, Minister of State for Trade and Industry and National Development, for a conversation with Sedifly's Joash Lee.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to. I haven't had time to change. Like back and forth. So I'm just going to pull whatever jacket I have from the back of my boot.
Thank you.
And try to match Joash.
Thank you,
Not
Minister
quite like that one. Yeah.
Alvin, for joining us today.
Yes.
It is my privilege to welcome our guest of honor and have Minister of State Alvin Tan here with us today. Minister Tan, well, needs no introduction, currently serves as the Minister of State for Trade and Industry and Minister of State for National Development. He's also a board member of the Monetary Authority of Singapore and the chairman of Young PAP. He has a very unique journey because before entering public service, Minister Tan held several senior positions at big tech firms like Meta and LinkedIn, and was also for a period of time an investment banker at Goldman Sachs. Minister Tan also is an alumnus of Harvard University with a master's in public administration. Thank you, Minister Alvin, for joining us today. Let's start off with your experiences in both the public as well as the private sector. Can you tell me a little bit about what were the different roles that you did, as well as how did you find it different from the public and private sector?
Okay, well, thank you, Joash, for having me. Joash was very, is a hustler. so you reached out on LinkedIn, I suppose, yes, and I'm one of those like Tan Sushan, who is the DBS, and Sushan would respond, right, and the last time. and I have a habit of responding because during the COVID crisis, when people wrote to me on LinkedIn and asked, hey, with this particular new rules that you've just put in place on the fly, there is some of these implications. So I shocked a few people by saying, okay, what are these things that are not working out for you? Let me go and speak to the team, speak to cabinet, and I'll change it on the spot. So when Joash reached out to me on LinkedIn, I said, okay, fine, but I have a back-to-back, I'm packed the entire day. I'm traveling from town all the way to Clementi for a Young PAP event, and then back here. And so I thought if I could come and support Joash, I will do what I can.
Thank you for making it.
So it's all Joash's hustling. You can give him a clap. Yeah. I thought it was useful because as he was sharing with me what he was trying to do today, maybe to share a little bit about my own experience from the private sector and public sector. Particularly many young people, including this young man here from Barcelona, where you are in a period of transition. And in fact, at the Young PAP event that I was just at, we were talking about transitions. Transitions between a child to be a caregiver, transitions between schooling to work, and then also transitioning between work and maybe the second season of your life. So I had transitioned, Joash, from the private sector where I spent most of my career in investment banking and in tech. And then in 2020, then Prime Minister Lee was looking for people from the private sector to join his team, particularly in the cabinet. And then given the fact that it was during COVID, and you would definitely feel a sense of responsibility, I said yes, and it has been now about 6 years and many different portfolios later. Yeah.
What are some of the key differences you would say between the public and private sector? Obviously, it's quite different. Were there any particular things that surprised you as you made that transition, as well as, well, maybe I don't know if it's too many questions at once, but how do those experiences in the private sector translate to the public sector experiences that you're now leading?
Yeah, well, in the private sector, I worked a lot with the public sector as well. And so my experiences, both in, so I was involved with very early days at Facebook, now Meta, and we were thinking about where to invest our headquarters, Asia Pacific headquarters. And so I worked a lot with different governments throughout in the Southeast Asian region, traveling very, very extensively. And I found working with the Singapore government, particularly the EDB and IMDA, and they have this group called DISG with Kiran and the team. I found them really easy to work with. Yeah. And so my experience in the private sector was that, well, this Singapore government, it makes it very, very easy to work with, vis-a-vis, others. I mean, so my early impressions was that it was good. But then my later impression was this. And then DPM Heng Swee Kiat, in one of the cabinet meetings, he's like, hey, Alvin, how's the transition between private sector and the public sector? And without skipping a heartbeat, I told DPM, I said, man, DPM, you have a lot of emails, and your emails are voluminous. And he says, that's exactly it. So that was my first experience. Private sector is very lean. As you know, you have to move very, very quickly. The public sector, of course, because you are managing public issues, you are managing a nation, you're also managing public funds, right? So you naturally have to be a little bit more careful. But I think in light of this, our public sector have been, over the last couple of years, been shedding a lot of these different rules, have been what myself, Minister Chi, SMS Loh, and others have been driving, which is pro-enterprise. How do we, over time, organizations, even private sector ones, will have more and more layers of rules, more and more layers of bureaucracy, but over time, how do you shed those layers? If you look at even the tech firms, right? I mean, they have shed workers, they have also shed capital expenditure, but all of these is because over time you need to refresh, over time you need to see what is not working, over time you need to see what's ossified, and then you must continue to be as lean and as flexible as possible. In the public sector, what we're trying to do, if you look at last night what Minister Chee Hong Tat had done with nightlife, as well as iLight, as well as the business innovation districts, these are very, very good examples of what we're trying to do to reduce red tape so that we can make our city vibrant. What we've done at the MAS is also to reduce the number of months it's taking to get, for example, a private bank account or to set up new family offices. Now, these things were tacked on from time to time, so it became very onerous. But you always need to balance risk versus reward. And that's what I found moving in from the private sector to move some of these private sector practices to the public sector so that we can continue to be nimble and be attractive and relevant to the world.
Yeah, the Singapore government has been definitely very pro-business and very supportive of different things. I think I mentioned earlier on that we are actually supported by Enterprise Singapore, and there are many of these different grants that actually help. And I know you yourself also very active in attending many of these startup events. I saw you at the HeyMax event. It's a travel platform for those without context. So let's shift the discussion a little bit. It's no surprise now that we are in some very uncertain times, whether that's geopolitically or economically. At the same time, technological disruption is happening at lightning speed. Singapore, like the rest of the world, is facing significant challenges. What do you think the younger generation students should be preparing themselves for? Are there certain skills or mindsets that are critical for these young and ambitious students, like the students we have in our crowd today, to adopt and to learn, for them to thrive in this evolving landscape?
When I was in private sector, I was seated there, right? And then everybody thought that the minister or that is some oracle. And please tell us what do we need to do for my business to be better, or please tell us what to study and all that. But I think that we are not in a great position, or we shouldn't be that oracle of truth. In fact, we are constantly learning. We're constantly experimenting with new ways of doing so, and continually also experimenting with ways in how to use the new tools at our disposal. I mentioned earlier on where when I was working early days at Facebook, we just acquired Instagram, and then we also experimented with Live, right? So now you have TikTok Live, you have IG Live. Now, with the next generation, in fact, now, right? Many of us use different tools, AI-enabled tools. I wouldn't say AI chatbots, but AI-enabled tools. It could be agentic tools, it could be chatbots, and you will have an opportunity to use those tools rather than to have the tools use you. I remember one of my leaders at Facebook, and he mentioned a quote by Marshall McLuhan, and he says, "Don't be taken over by the tools. Use tools rather than have the tools use you. And the tools that you use can shape you as well." So how we harness AI matters. Now, there has been a very big pushback, as you know, Joash, in US universities in commencement speeches, where people kena boot, right? So Eric Schmidt, and others have been booed, and that is a real sentiment, right? And I think for youth, if you think that, hey, all of these guys, and the tech or leaders are saying, AI is going to take over your jobs, or AI is going to be the new way forward. You have every right to feel indignant about this. You have every right to feel indignant, but you also have agency. You have agency. I'll tell you a very interesting story. I was in Hangzhou. Hangzhou. How many of you have been to Hangzhou? Great. Hangzhou is in Zhejiang province. And if you don't already know, Hangzhou and Zhejiang is basically like the Silicon Valley of China, right? So Zhejiang University is the third best university after, arguably, but ranking, after Tsinghua Peita, right? And many of the new startups like DeepSeek, Unitree Robotics, the ones that were jumping and everything, Rocket, and many others, they derive out of Hangzhou and Zhejiang. And one of the companies is Game Science. I don't know if you know this, but you probably know this company or this game called Hei Shen Hua Wukong, or Black Myth Wukong, right? And Black Myth Wukong is one of the top grossing games, 30 million downloads in the world. I completed it, but I didn't beat the side boss called Langshen. And I was very fascinated because it was a very, very fascinating game. So I went to Zhejiang and Hangzhou, and I met the founders of Game Science, Yoshi Ke, and the founder told me, he said, I'm actually working on a second title, and it's called Black Myth Zhongkui, which is the second title. So I said, I completed your first game, and how long did you take to complete, to design and produce this game, Blacksmith Wukong? Then he said, 6, 7 years. But I really did say 6, 7 years. And then I said, but now with AI, wouldn't you take less time to complete Blacksmith Zhongkui? And he said, no, actually, maybe a little bit, maybe about 5 years, 6 years. And I said, but isn't with AI, wouldn't you be able to create this a little bit faster? And it says, and he told me this, which I will always remember, and I thought this is useful for all of you. He said, what AI is, right? AI is large language models that is taken from human knowledge, right? It's whatever you input in medical knowledge, culture, technology, so on and so forth, into this. But beyond this, there is human creativity. And so when he creates something like Blacksmith Wukong or Blacksmith Zhongkui, actually, he needs to create something above what is already within the LLM. And he says that, for me, is uniquely a creative aspect of the human condition. Mm-hmm. So continue to do that. AI will continue to help you augment and do something which is more mundane. But if it frees you up to do something else, it could be something where you have never thought about doing, learning a new language, engaging in music or others, then let that free you up to do something in the creative spaces. I think that's a big lesson that I learned.
Yeah, I think it's about how you adapt, how you use AI as a tool to essentially help you. And as you very accurately mentioned, AI is not, there's certain things that AI can't do. And in our context, one of the things would be, or even in the tuition industry, right? I don't think any student would want to learn from a tutor, or any student would want to take advice from an AI educational consultant. Many students focus very heavily on academics and grades, and that is obviously important in the world, in Singapore. From your perspective, what are some skills or qualities that matter most when it comes to building a profile that can create real community or national impact beyond just academic achievements? And are there any initiatives that you're currently working on that you've seen that are worth a mention for our students who might be interested in pursuing these different opportunities?
Yeah, well, Joash, one particular lesson that I learned this week is I bought my son and my daughter, they share their books. This book called The Amazing Generation. I don't know if you've read it. It's by Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Anxious Generation. And in The Anxious Generation, he spoke about how we are all locked into our screens, right? How we are locked into our screens, social media, and screens, right? So even Netflix and the likes. And he says that we are basically tethered into our screens, and the harm that will cause is challenging, right? To this generation. It's effectively, his thesis is that it's making this generation more anxious. And driving here from Clementi, I was listening to The Economist, and even in India, they were saying that India's birth rate is dipping. And do you know what they attributed it to? One reason that they attributed, this is on The Economist this week, that they attributed it to the Indians, because India is the most populous nation in the world, 1.5 billion. And they attribute it to, then it was cable TV. And this is what The Economist wrote. It says, instead of making love, because there's a child here, Indians are no longer making love, but they're watching cable TV. And then he said, later on, that, in fact, then with the advent of mobile devices, it's gotten worse. So you see the Indian TFR now dropping. The point about this is that the technology is causing a lot of us to be an anxious generation, where we are always tethered to our phones. But Jonathan Haidt, this week, when I bought this book called The Amazing Generation, what he was talking about is that we ought not to allow for technology to overtake us, right? To dominate our lives. In fact, get out there, make friends, learn about different things, and even when you go and find work, right? So for example, in my team, now I bug my team less when I'm supposed to do a speech. Because I have an idea, for example, I feed it into Gemini, and I'm back and forth to Gemini, right? But my team gives me the first draft. Yeah, then I also bounce my team off ideas about what else can we do? What else can we do rather than waste hours on a speech? And straight away, my speech making time is basically like, I don't know, Erica, what is it, like less than an hour, right? So it's back and forth, right? So this helps us to then free up time to do other things, other strategic thinking. So when you are going and you are building and you are trying to get roles, right? And you're interviewing with roles, the baseline is that you already know how to use technology. But what makes you stand out? Can you show up? Can you turn up on time? Can you be a team player? Do you have can you have ideas? Are you able to interact face-to-face with a human being to land a deal, to negotiate the deal, to gain trust from the fellow human being, and to get value for your firm? I think that's absolutely most important. Tomorrow, in a few hours' time, in fact, I'm going to Tanzania and Zanzibar with President Tharman. Why are we going all the way there? Just go AI, just AI lah. Just go and Zoom. It's because nothing beats going down to the ground, meeting people, understanding the ground, understanding the culture, understanding the people, understanding the economy. And there we can, as Singapore, I'm going there to sign some trade deals. There in Singapore, we can open markets. And that is key. That's something which AI can't do. And AI also cannot play football. Yamin Lamar won't use AI, right? I mean, he will use AI, but his AI is not as good as him in doing his Rabona, right? There you go.
Yeah, I mean, AI is an enabler, it's a tool, but you still need that human, that level of strategic input to craft the messaging to be what you want or craft the task.
Yeah.
A lot of students wrestle with some big decisions. You know, there are decisions like whether to work in the public or private sector. For students who are interested in building startups, should I stay in college and build the startup, or should I drop out, or should I study abroad locally? And when students are thinking about these different decisions, what is one piece of advice you would give to them as they are thinking about these choices? And are there certain paths or experiences that are especially valuable depending on what they want to do in the long run? So maybe we can start off with the public versus private, and then we can talk about studying abroad versus studying locally.
Yeah. Well, Joash, you studied in Columbia. I think you have no regrets going to Columbia and New York. I had no regrets studying overseas. I would say this, okay, I mean, this one is, it's all based upon what, I mean, it's to each his own, right? But if I were to zoom back into your age right now, I mean, you guys all look super young, you too. But these guys really look super, okay, you guys also look very young. But I would do a few things, okay? I mean, this is really to each his own. But I would absolutely go overseas if I can. I would absolutely go overseas if I can. Because the experience of, okay, ironing your own clothes, you know, paying your own bills, go and do a second job to go and pay your bills, and all of these things are just intangible, really intangible. Okay, because your parents are not doing this for you, not sending you to this and all that. That is intangible. And then also going to a foreign land where you are the minority and the people don't speak Singlish, for example, right? Then you have to adapt. That also gives you adaptability skills, you know. Yeah, so I would so do that. I would so do that. And you know, you could go to the US. If you give me a chance right now, second chance in my life, I would probably go to, I would go to China. Yeah, in fact, I was like, man, I should have gone to Zhejiang University. Just to, you know, because I'm already, I mean, we're all rather good in English. Just go and challenge yourself into another language. You know, if you want to go, maybe go to Madrid, IESE, okay, or Barcelona, IESE, to learn Spanish, which is going to be one of the most used language in the US even, right? So test yourself, you know, challenge yourself. So that's one. Or for startups, you know, I just completed some of the work on the economic strategy review on Committee on Startups, and we are building we are boosting our startup ecosystem in Singapore. So access to capital, spaces, talent, technology, and everything. But I have very, very good friends who have created startups, including those who have created, for example, Carousel with Cyril and Marcus, for example, or Declan, who created Castlereagh, for example, and many others, Tingwen, who, you know, knew Baru. And it's very tough. You ask them, it's very, very tough. But if you ask Cyril and Marcus, they're like, okay, if I'm young, just go ahead and do it. And right now, government is supporting a lot of startups. So I would say go for it. Yeah. Don't go and join government so early. Sure, you can ask scolding. Yeah. No government, yeah. Well, but if you have a true passion for government, please go, because the government, I mean, there's government scholarships and all that. You can also join a little bit later as well. But I mean, I'm biased. I would go for the private sector first, because then you challenge yourself, you see. You really challenge. Not saying that the public sector, you don't challenge yourself. You do, and the public sector, ours is a very, very high level, very high quality. And I've seen very, very good public officers who then make the transition from the public sector to the private sector. In fact, when I was in Facebook and we were hiring at a very, very high rate, I was looking at Singapore government officials because they were just super good. They were just super, super good. Yeah, so consider that. Yeah, consider that.
Yeah, I think it's not just about the hard skills that you learn, you know, like in the classroom, but it's also about the soft skills that you can pick up beyond that, right? So Minister Alvin, if you could leave one piece of advice for every student in this room, what would it be? I know that's a very broad question, but is there any particular piece of advice, whether it comes to the skills that they're learning, the things that they're doing, that everyone should take away?
Yeah. Well, Perrin has heard me say this many times, right? I always say the same thing, which is just turn up. Yeah. Wherever you are, right? Whether you've been given a assignment, or whether you've promised Joash to come and turn up on a Saturday, just turn up. I mean, if your team didn't turn up, this wouldn't be successful, right? But whatever you have been entrusted with, either an internship or a small task, just turn up. Because when you turn up, you will learn. When you turn up, you will meet somebody. When you turn up, you will make an impact. It's very simple, but you will know that a lot of people just don't. Or they turn up late, they don't turn up on time, and employers cannot trust that person to turn up. And that is a big mark against you. That's really, really important. So just turn up. Yeah. Can you imagine if Yamin Lamar didn't turn up for training? He wouldn't be in the team. Or he wouldn't be in the Spanish team, right? Or Spain is not in the World Cup, right? Yeah, so they didn't turn up.
Turning up and building that trust and credibility. All right, we're right on time. Thank you, Minister Alvin, for joining us today, and to all of you, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'd now like to present Minister Alvin with a token of appreciation from Sedifly. I'd like to invite our Board of Directors, Ms. Jessie Lim and Mr. Daniel Ding, for the same. Please welcome back Ananya Ann, Head of Program at Sedifly.
Hello, everyone. Today, we have heard from leaders, founders, and students who have proven that no single blueprint is the blueprint for success. Their stories remind us that our journeys are defined by the unique opportunities we seize and the different directions we choose to take. Echoing what a lot of our speakers have said today at Sedifly, we believe that true growth comes from staying curious, taking up those opportunities, turn up, just like Minister Tan was talking about, and embracing challenges and learning from those who paved the way. We hope today's conversations have inspired you to take the next bold step towards your own goals. Now, before we welcome our final speaker, we have some exciting news. Today, we have been participating with you as audience through those forms, and we have collected 3 lucky winners to give away Sedifly vouchers. We will be contacting you directly via email, but a huge congratulations to form number 39, who has won a $500 voucher. And we'd also like to congratulate form number 26 and form number 63 for winning $250 vouchers each. We will be reaching out directly and sending them the digital copies of those vouchers. Right? It's been an absolute honor to be your MC today. I hope you enjoyed today's sessions, which were insightful, I hope inspiring, and we hope to see you guys taking some action in real world with all those advices. But yes, let me welcome Joash, founder and CEO of Sedifly, to give you the closing note.
Once again, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm just going to give you, not too long because I know everyone wants to go grab food, go for the networking session. I'm just going to do a quick summary of what we kind of discussed today, starting from the very beginning. Eugene, the founder and CEO of the Assembly Place, emphasized the importance of curiosity about the world, grounded in building a business, having a good education, and he scaled his business from 0 to IPO. And then we had Tak, who shared about the differences in the UK, in Singapore, in US, differences in these different education systems, and how that could help students achieve their best. We then learned about Tinan's journey building Southeast Asia's largest talent recruitment platforms. He has a very unique journey. Obviously, we talked a little bit about dropping out, whether it's the right thing to do, whether it's not the right thing to do. And then we moved on to a student sharing with Charlotte and Koye, which I hope was insightful and more relatable for all of you, hearing from your fellow peers themselves. And we before closing off the day, we had a VC panel where we heard from some of Asia's most notable VCs. We had Golden Gate Ventures in the house, Insignia Venture Partners, and then a founder come VC, Mohan, who built E27 and also is an investor at Orwell Ventures, before culminating to a keynote interview with our guest of honor, who shared that as worried as we might be when AI might seemingly be overtaking our jobs and so on, it's a tool. Just like how fire is a good servant but a bad master, we are the masters and we have to control how we use AI. With that, we'll be having a coffee break / networking session at the back, and it's my absolute pleasure for all of you to come for Sedifly's inaugural Future Student Summit. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.